Chapter 223. Lu Fu led Xiao Su and the others to the vicinity of the rockery, then pointed to the place where they had previously hidden. She looked at the stunningly beautiful man in front of her with some fear and said, "I originally wanted to bring that young master to find you, but when we arrived here, we met a Taoist that my father had invited. We hid here, but I don't know why that young master knocked me out. When I woke up, he was already gone." "What Taoist priest?" Xiao Su caught the main point in her words. Since the little fellow wanted to look for him, she would not run off on her own, unless she encountered something that she had to solve. Speaking of this Taoist priest, a trace of fear appeared in Lu Fu's eyes. "This Taoist priest was invited by my father from somewhere. He lives in our residence and fiddles with elixirs all day long. My father respects him very much and gave him all the precious herbs in the treasury. His residence is in the courtyard not far ahead," Lu Fu added. Xiao Su immediately said, "Bring us there." Yes. At this moment, Lu Fu did not have any romantic thoughts in her heart. Facing this handsome man in front of her, other than fear, there was only fear. She was afraid that her little finger would say goodbye to her like this. The group quickly arrived at the Taoist priest's residence. The decorations were gorgeous and extravagant. It was even worse than the inner courtyard of the Lu residence. Hualing smacked his lips. This tea set, this table and chairs. Even the Lu residence's main courtyard did not have such luxuries. However, after searching for a long time, there was no sign of Chu Qingyan. Instead, they caught a few young Taoist priests. "I'm asking you, answer me honestly," Hualing said sternly. Those young Taoist priests had never seen such a scene before and nodded repeatedly. "Have you seen a young man around 10 years old?" Once this was said, those young Taoist priests immediately lowered their heads. They hesitated and did not know how to answer. However, the black-robed man in the room exuded a cold aura, causing them to lower their bodies again. One of them replied with a slight sob, "We have seen more than one. Who are you asking about?" "What do you mean?" Hualing was puzzled. "There are at least dozens of children around 10 years old locked up in our dungeon. I don't know if the person you are looking for is inside." The young Taoist priest continued to cry. Xiao Su's eyes lit up. He stepped forward and asked, "Is it the missing child in Pingyang City?" A young Taoist priest stole a glance at Xiao Su in front of him, and quickly lowered his head. "Yes, since last year, Master has ordered us to secretly catch young boys and girls around the age of 10. Today, our senior brother has caught another young boy. I heard that we have a total of 49. Tonight, we can directly start refining medicine." Refining medicine. As soon as these two words were spoken, Xiao Su's expression changed slightly. It was frighteningly cold. "Where is that dungeon?" "It's behind the mountain." The coldness emitted by the person in front of him was about to freeze him. He crawled on the ground and felt that the air was colder than the ground. "Let's go, take us there." Hualing felt that something was off. Hearing that something was refining medicine, he knew it was a heretical cultivation method. If the little princess was caught, the consequences would be unimaginable. So he grabbed one of the little Taoists and threatened him to quickly lead the way. Xiao Su clenched his fists and hid them in his sleeves. His knuckles turned white. "Little guy, nothing must happen to you." Inside the stone room, when the sword stabbed out, it could not be pulled out. Although the young boy did not understand, he gave up on pulling out the sword, and turned to look at the person beside him. "You're very smart." His voice was filled with admiration. Chu Qingyan casually used her sleeve to wipe the sweat off her head. In that moment just now, her heart had been suspended in midair. It was a good thing that he was fast and did not hesitate at all. Otherwise, if those people came, she could protect herself, but there was still a large group of weak little children by her side. "You're too kind." It was a good thing that when she was bored before, she had asked the wood spirit to give her if there was anyone who could make this kind of thing. He had said that there were not many people who could make it in this world. Not many people meant that there were still people who could make it. Just in case, she suddenly had an idea and asked him if there was a way to break a lock so that it could not be opened. The wood spirit laughed at her for being too cautious, but he still taught her the method. As long as she used something to block the axle in the keyhole, it could prevent people from opening it. At that time, it was just a casual question, but she did not expect to use it in the end. Chu Qingyan was a little emotional. It seemed that the seemingly small things in life could save your life in the end, as long as you paid attention to them. The young boy did not say anything else, but walked to the last iron door and tried to open it. However, he found that the iron door did not move at all. There was no keyhole, making it impossible to open it. Chu Qingyan walked forward and observed for a while. Her expression was a little serious. Before she came in, it was too dark, so she did not see how the Taoist priest opened the iron door. Now she was also a little helpless. A trace of anxiety appeared on Chu Qingyan's face. The young boy comforted her. "Didn't you say that there would be people coming to save us? As long as we can wait, we will be saved." The young boy's words were her last hope. Even if they were captured, the time would have passed. If the Taoist priest wanted to use them to refine medicine, he would have to wait until tomorrow night. They would have to wait even longer for rescue. But her only worry was whether Big Ice Cube and the others would see the mark she left behind. Seeing that she was still frowning, the young boy asked in a low voice, "Are you okay?" Chu Qingyan did not know why he suddenly asked, "I'm okay. What's wrong?" "Nothing." The young boy looked at her, then turned and walked to the other side. Just now, when she lit the agarwood, he noticed that even though she was wearing a mask, she was the closest to the agarwood. The Taoist priests on guard fainted when they smelled the fragrance. It was enough to see how strong the medicine was. It was already very impressive that she could hold on until now. In fact, the young boy's worry was right. Because she had inhaled too much agarwood, Chu Qingyan's mind was a little sluggish. However, she could not fall. Gritting her teeth, she had to hold on. On the other side of the stone door, the Taoist priests were not worried at all that they could not catch the children. However, when they arrived, they found that the stone door could not be opened. They immediately panicked. Quickly call Master." After a moment, the Taoist priest heard the news and came over. When he saw that the disciples were helpless against the stone door, he was furious. "Smash! Smash this stone door open for me." Yes. The Taoist priest stepped forward, and one after another, they slammed the door. On the other side, Chu Qingyan and the others also felt the strange movement inside. Everyone looked at each other, and there was a faint trace of fear in their eyes. "Are they here?" Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. Chapter 224. When the stone door was smashed again and again behind them, the hearts of the people on the other side also trembled along with it. More than 40 children huddled together in a group, terrified to the extreme. "Don't be afraid. Even if they come, I will protect all of you." Chu Qingyan touched the dagger on her waist and said calmly, although this youth was about the same age as them, but for some reason, whenever they were about to break down, they would involuntarily want to rely on her and get closer to her when they heard her soothing voice. When everyone was lonely and afraid, when one person stood out, the others would involuntarily hide behind her because they subconsciously felt that this person would protect them as they moved forward. When the young man noticed that everyone's emotions were once again calmed down by her, he looked at her in surprise. He didn't know what kind of tenacious vitality this person who had appeared out of nowhere had, as well as that endless self-confidence that made everyone trust her again and again. At that moment, Chu Qingyan could hear the banging sounds. Although she was far away, she could not withstand the continuous echoes. Her brain was about to explode, and she was barely able to maintain her consciousness. She was about to be swallowed by the darkness. She shook her head and reached for the dagger at her waist again. When her hand touched the cold blade, she grabbed it without hesitation and tried to regain her consciousness again. She had to support the situation. These were all children and she had to take charge of them alone. Her misty eyes instantly regained their brightness. Chu Qingyan felt that she needed to talk to someone to divert her attention. Otherwise, she would collapse before the Taoist priests arrived. Hence, she turned and looked at the youth who was taking care of everyone. She could not help but ask, "Where are you from? What's your name?" The youth glanced at her. "I don't have a name and I don't know where I'm from." Chu Qingyan did not expect that her casual question would poke at his heart. Although the youth's tone was normal, she could clearly see the pain in his eyes. She could not help but sigh faintly. Looking at his tattered clothes, He was probably a child beggar wandering in Pingyang City. "Hello, my name is Chuyan. How did you get caught?" Chu Qingyan asked again. "One day, I woke up and found myself lying in an alley in Pingyang City. I was so hungry that I couldn't move and couldn't remember anything. When I woke up the second time, I was already in the stone room." He calmly narrated his story, as if these 2 sentences were enough to explain his entire life. Chu Qingyan shut her mouth. She felt that if she continued to ask, it would be like rubbing salt on his wound. Thus, she turned her attention to the iron door. Their group had safely arrived at the last iron door. She reckoned that Big Ice Cube should have finished dealing with Lu Ying's matter by now. Then, as long as she waited a little longer, she would be able to see Big Ice Cube. "We have to do something." Chu Qingyan's gaze drifted to the stone wall and suddenly stopped. "Tell me," the young man said directly, as if he was at her beck and call. Upon hearing that, Chu Qingyan smiled and immediately whispered her plan into his ear. The more the young man heard, the more surprised he was. Finally, he suppressed the admiration he had for this person, and nodded repeatedly. "All right, let's do it." Chu Qingyan picked out a few of the stronger ones from the group of children to assist him. Only a quarter of an hour had passed, but it already felt extremely long. And at this moment, they heard the sound of something breaking from afar. Chu Qingyan immediately straightened her back and held the dagger in her hand, her expression cold. That young man quickly approached her, holding another sword in his hand. He whispered into her ear, "It's broken." Later, let's try our best to hold them back," Chu Qingyan said calmly. "All right." That young man had just responded when a flurry of footsteps came from afar. The sound of footsteps seemed to step on everyone's hearts. The atmosphere instantly tensed up. "Run, run, I told you to run. Why aren't you running?" The Taoist priest appeared in the narrow passageway with a gloomy face. Behind him were dozens of Taoist priests dressed in the same uniform. "If we ran, how could we still see such a beast in human face?" Taoist priest. "Oh no. To describe you as a beast in human face is simply an insult to these 4 words. You're simply worse than a beast." Chu Qingyan leaned against the stone wall with a smile on her face. But the words she said were enough to make the Taoist priest vomit blood. "What a glib tongue. See how I'll deal with you later. I'll definitely pull out those white teeth of yours one by one." The Taoist priest felt his teeth hurt from being angered by her. He immediately quickened his pace, wishing he could swallow her alive. If it wasn't for this stinky brat who interfered and let these children go, he would have already started refining the pill. Now that he missed the best opportunity, he could only wait for another day. After so many years, it wasn't easy for him to wait for the right time, the right place and the right people, but it was all ruined by this stinky brat. He couldn't let him off so easily. Chu Qingyan calmly looked at the approaching crowd, as if she didn't hear the Taoist priest's threat. She was still talking and smiling, as if she didn't experience the world and didn't know fear. At this time she calmly reminded, "Taoist priest, walk slowly, be careful of the slippery ground." Just as she finished speaking, the Taoist priest who was walking in front suddenly slipped and lost his balance. He fell flat on his back. The people who were walking in front immediately stopped, but the people behind didn't know the situation in front and immediately rushed forward. The people in front were forced to move forward, so one by one, they slipped and fell. The person who fell first couldn't get up, and the people behind him followed one after another. Like a human pyramid, they couldn't move forward, and they couldn't get up. The Taoist priest who was walking in front was also pressed down by people. He was caught off guard, and he roared at the people who pressed on top of him to get up. Those Taoist priests immediately became flustered. When the Taoist priest was helped up, his clothes were already wrinkled and his Taoist priest hat was also crooked. It was very funny. Even if the children were scared to death, when they saw these people in such a sorry state, they couldn't help but be amused. "I already told you to be careful, but you didn't listen. This is called not listening to good people. You'll suffer losses in front of you." Chu Qingyan pretended to sigh, looking like a child who couldn't be taught. That youth was teased by her, and couldn't help but laugh. When the Taoist priest saw that the group of children were pointing at him, and that stinky brat was laughing with a face full of ridicule, his heart suddenly burned with anger. He was deceived by this stinky brat's deceitful and well-behaved manner, which was why he led the wolf into the house. It was also his fault for being eager to win, otherwise he would have thought that this back mountain was so hidden. No matter how lost he was, it was impossible for him to appear there. The Taoist priest looked at the people in front of him coldly. Did they really think that he was easy to provoke? Chapter 225. Chu Qingyan saw the sinister smile on the black-hearted Taoist's face. She clapped her hands calmly to attract everyone's attention. Then, she said slowly, Taoist, don't you want to see what's beneath your feet? If you fall again, will your old bones be able to withstand it? Old bones? These 3 words simply pierced the heart of Taoist Master Blackheart. He had practiced Taoist magic for so many years in order to find the method of immortality. However, after decades of searching, he finally found the method of using the blood 3 inches from the wrist of a 10-year-old child to refine the elixir of immortality. He was just 1 step away from success, but who would have thought that halfway through, someone would come out of nowhere? Brat, don't be too arrogant. You'll die soon, Blackheart said fiercely. At that moment, a few Taoists squatted down to check the ground. They found that the ground was slippery and greasy. They rubbed some of it under their noses and their expressions changed drastically. Master, there's kerosene all over the ground. Blackheart was stunned. Where did the kerosene come from? Just as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something. He immediately looked up at the top of the stone stairs. The barrel of kerosene that was originally placed there had disappeared, and there was another barrel beside Chu Qingyan's feet. Wasn't that the kerosene? Chu Qingyan was not worried when she saw that they had discovered it. Instead, she smiled at the Taoists who were about to walk over. You should know what kerosene is used for, right? If you're not careful, we'll pour it on the ground. It'll be a pity to waste it. What are you trying to do? One of the Taoists immediately shouted. Chu Qingyan raised her hand, and the youth beside her lit the match in his hand. The Taoists immediately retracted their feet and took a few steps back. Master, there's a fire in her hand. The kerosene will ignite when it comes in contact with fire. The black-hearted Taoist gave him a slap. I know. Move aside. How about it? If you dare to take a step forward, we might lose our grip on the match in fear and drop it on the ground. When the fire starts, you won't be able to escape. Chu Qingyan stood on the other side with a relaxed expression. It seemed that she was not threatening them, but discussing the weather today. How dare you? When the fire starts, you guys won't be able to escape either. The black-hearted Taoist frowned coldly. He was used to the flattery of high officials and nobles. He had never been schemed against like this before. He was extremely angry. He looked at the ground and snorted coldly. Then, he lowered his head and said a few words to his disciple beside him. After that, the disciple accepted the order and quickly left with his men. Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and looked relaxed. However, she kept her eyes on the black-hearted Taoist to prevent him from doing anything. Now that she saw him talking to someone, although she couldn't hear what he said, she already guessed that the Taoist had a countermeasure. She felt uneasy and turned around to look at the iron gate behind her. Big Ice Cube, why aren't you here yet? Meanwhile, the person Chu Qingyan was waiting for was rushing to the back of the mountain. Master, look, this is the mark left by the little young master. Hualing, who was looking around, pointed at the mark under the tree and said. Xiao Su walked over to take a look and knit his brows. This mark was unique to Xiao Lai. When they were taking shelter from the rain at the inn, the little fellow was bored, so he wrote down these marks for her to memorize. At that time, she was angry and didn't memorize them, but now he found that although she only talked about it, she was actually very diligent in learning. His heart was slightly stirred, and he wanted to see the little fellow even more. Where is the entrance? Xiao Su coldly said to the little Taoist. I don't know. I only know that it's in the back of the mountain. I have never been in the stone room before. The little Taoist was scared by this sudden chill, but he really did not know where it was. His master had a rule that those who had been in the sect for less than 3 years were not allowed to enter the alchemy room. This man was good-looking, but he was too fierce. Xiao Su's eyes were cold and he did not waste any more time. Everyone, search for this king. even if you have to raise the back of the mountain to the ground. You must find the entrance. It was rare for their master to reveal his emotions like this, but it was always because of the little princess. Hua Ling and Turin looked at each other with a complicated gaze, but they quickly split up. They had to find the little princess quickly. Otherwise, the longer this dragged on, the more danger the little princess would be in. The back of the mountain that should have been dark was now lit up like it was daytime. In the stone room, the two sides were facing each other. Taoist priest, are you still planning on being stubborn? Lu Ying's nest has already been destroyed. Even if you catch us, you don't have time to refine those pills. Chu Qingyan tried to persuade him, but she knew that it would not have much effect. However, as long as they could stall for time and wait for rescue, everything was worth trying. The black-hearted Taoist priest panicked when he heard this. Is what you said true? Chu Qingyan saw that he was panicking, so she struck while the iron was hot. Why would I lie to you? Lu Ying was corrupt and took bribes. He colluded with officials and businessmen. His crimes are extremely heinous. He should have been arrested by now and will be here soon. I advise you to turn back quickly before you cause a disaster. It's not too late to stop now. After saying this, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that she had the potential to convert people. The next time she met Su Jian, she had to talk to him. She did not need to shave her head and become a monk to convert people. The black-hearted Taoist priest quickly calmed down and looked at the other end of the passage. He was young and full of vitality. His eyes were filled with the jealousy and hatred in his heart. He only wanted immortality and immortality. He did not need anything else. Do you think this seat will be safe if this seat listens to you? You're too naive. Once this seat surrenders, I can avoid death, but I can't escape punishment. Moreover, this seat has been pursuing immortality for half of my life. How can I give up halfway? Also, do you think the exit is only that iron door? As long as we catch you, we can also escape. Chu Qingyan had to admit that this person was really stubborn. There was no such thing as immortality in this world. Otherwise, the order of the human world would have been in chaos. However, his last words still made her raise her guard. No, she must not let him succeed. But at this moment, the Taoist priest who had left and returned with bags of things. Chu Qingyan frowned slightly. Master, the things have been brought. When the Taoist priest opened the bag, Chu Qingyan looked from afar and vaguely saw what was inside. Using soil to put out the fire, this black-hearted Taoist priest was not stupid. However, this made her heart sink. Brat, do you want to surrender now? Otherwise, it's only a matter of time before we catch you. The black-hearted Taoist priest pinched his beard and smiled slyly. Chu Qingyan ignored him and looked at the iron door behind her. Finally, she made a decision. In the empty passage, she said to the person beside her in a low voice, "Set the fire." Chapter 226. Just as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, the youth didn't even frown. He even hesitated and loosened his hand, causing the fire starter to fall to the ground. What? That black-hearted Taoist didn't expect that this stinky brat would rather set a fire to stop them. But was this useful? As soon as the fire starter fell onto the kerosene, with a poochy sound, the fire started to spread rapidly. It was several times faster than when the lantern was lit. Once the fire started, Chu Qingyan and the youth immediately retreated. At that time, in order to cut off all means of retreat, she deliberately splashed the kerosene further away so that it wouldn't smoke her own people. However, this rolling heat still made everyone sweat. Master, what should we do? This porcelain doll-like youth was actually so decisive in doing things, causing the Taoist priests to immediately panic. What do you mean, what should we do? Quickly put out the fire. The black-hearted Taoist priest immediately ordered everyone to put out the fire. The torrential flame spread into his eyes, igniting a raging fury. This stinking brat, if he dared to destroy these boys and girls that he had painstakingly captured, he would definitely throw him into a pot of boiling oil and make him beg for death. So what if these Taoist priests had soil? Not only the ground, the walls were also smeared with kerosene. So this fire wouldn't be extinguished in a short period of time. The fire filled the sky and all that could be seen was a sea of fire. Chu Qingyan felt that her brain was starting to become dizzy as she staggered a step. Just as she was about to fall to the ground, her shoulders were pressed down by a pair of strong arms. "Are you all right?" She was in a daze, thinking that it was Big Ice Cube, but when the other party opened his mouth to ask with concern, she felt as if a basin of cold water was poured over her, and she immediately sobered up. She gently pushed away the youth's hand and tried to stand up straight. When the haziness in her eyes faded, she turned to look at him and comforted him with a smile. "Don't worry, I'm fine." At this time, the children who were huddled in the corner looked at the endless raging fire and immediately began to sob softly. In front of them was a big fire, and behind them was a dead end. They already felt the threat of death. "Don't be afraid. Use a cloth to cover your nose and mouth. Don't breathe in the smoke." Chu Qingyan softened her voice and used her most delicate voice to say softly, "Will we die?" A younger child widened his frightened eyes and blinked his tears as he asked, "No, good and evil will eventually be repaid. You are all still children. You haven't experienced the ups and downs of life, the joys and sorrows. Heaven won't be so cruel to take you away. And those bad people who have committed all kinds of evil, of course, they will die." As Taoist priest, Taoist priest, Taoist priest, Taoist priest, Taoist priest, Taoist, 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 Taoist priest, Taoist, 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 Taoist was Taoist. Taoist think they Taoist, Taoist. Taoist, tease the, t. Relax, all of you lie on the ground. Chu Qingyan immediately ordered. When they were in school, they often practiced earthquakes and fires. Smoke always drifted upwards, and only the air near the ground was the cleanest. That was why she asked them to lie on the ground. However, this passageway was surrounded by stone walls. The thick smoke would not disperse and would soon cover the entire passageway. Therefore, time was very precious to them. This stone room was temporarily built by Lu Ying for this Black Heart Taoist priest. It was not very exquisite, so when the fire started, the smoke would definitely float out through the cracks. If Big Ice Cube and the others were around, they would definitely notice something strange, and at that time they would be saved. When the stone chamber was filled with thick smoke, some of it drifted out through the cracks in the stone walls. Huo Ling and the others were closely searching for the exit when they heard someone exclaim, "Lord, there's smoke coming from here." As soon as he said that, Xiao immediately went forward. The guard pushed aside the layers of vines and saw the hidden iron door. At this time, the thick smoke was passing through the iron door and drifting out. The black iron door was gradually turning dark red. It was hard to imagine what kind of disaster was happening inside. "Master, this door can't be opened." Several guards tried to find the mechanism, but they could not find it. Moreover, the smell of smoke was getting thicker. This subordinate will call Mu Ling. Huo Ling immediately thought of Mu Ling. He was skilled in all kinds of secret mechanisms. This iron door was not a problem for him, so Huo Ling planned to bring him here. At this time, Turin, who had been silent on the side, spoke. "It's too late." "Then what do we do? Maybe the young princess consort is inside." Huo Ling pulled his hair, his face full of anxiety. "Break it down." In the midst of everyone's anxiety, they heard a voice as cold as an icy spring break through the thick smoke and fire and reach their ears. "Understood." The black-clothed guard held an axe and chopped around the iron door. Since they could not open this door, then they would make this door have no meaning. "Little fellow, bear with it for a bit longer. This king will be here soon." With each chop, a hole would appear in the thick stone wall, and more smoke would come out. The people outside could not stop coughing from the smoke, not to mention the sealed space inside. Xiaosu's brows became tighter and tighter. As time passed, his heart became heavier. At this time, the people in the cave could not stand the smoke that was getting thicker and thicker. They could not stop coughing, but no one cried. This was because the person standing on the stairs told them that crying was useless and would waste their energy. So even if they were afraid, they did not dare cry. They could only clench their teeth and endure it. Chu Qingyan looked at the red light in the sky, and it was like she was looking at a fire dragon spitting out flames. It was so hot that it felt like her entire body was being ignited. Her skin felt like it was being burned, and it was like tens of thousands of needles were stabbing her. making her feel very painful. She felt her vision become a bit blurry. In the flames that filled the sky, she seemed to see a noble youth wearing luxurious clothes kneeling on the ground of the palace. The pillars around him were falling down one by one, but he did not seem to notice it at all. His eyes were empty as he looked into the distance. Chu Qingyan's eyes suddenly opened wide. Big ice block, it's like I saw the palace in the past. The palace in the flames and the helpless you. So being surrounded by flames was this kind of despair. This fire is so big, so hot, it makes people feel very uncomfortable. It's like I can feel the pain you felt in the past. My heart hurts so much. Back then, did you also feel this much pain? It's like tens of thousands of ants were gnawing on your body. Big ice block, I really want to save you. Hong Long. It was like something was being moved. She turned around and saw a familiar figure flying down the stone steps. Chapter 227. The moment the iron door was moved open, Xiao was the first to step in. The heat wave came and lifted the hair by his ear, as if it was going to burn his skin. He did not retreat as he narrowed his eyes and searched through the thick smoke. The tottering figure had her back to him, and in front of her was the heat wave. The hot wind blew up her sleeves and the hem of her clothes. The white dress fluttered in the heat, as if it was going to be blown away by the wind. At this time, she was dressed as a man and the clothes she was wearing were clothes she had not worn many years ago. The figure in the raging fire appeared in front of him, as if it was related to the fire that had swallowed the entire palace and him for 10 years. No, he would not let the same thing happen again. Qingyan. He stepped on the stone wall and landed on the ground, reaching out to catch her falling figure. As if he had caught the treasure of his life, he hugged her in his arms and did not dare let go. A familiar aura, clean, elegant, and reassuring. Big ice block, you're here. Her hand on the dagger could finally be let go. Yes, this king came late. Xiao coldly looked at the raging fire. Hu Ling and the others were a step behind, and had already started putting out the fire. She knew that as long as he came, she could give him everything. But at this time, she had many things she wanted to say to him. She wanted to say it to the helpless young prince from 10 years ago. If I came 10 years earlier, could I have stopped that disaster? It was a big fire, and she was lucky because she was waiting for a big block of ice. And the fire from 10 years ago was filled with despair because he did not wait for the person he was waiting for. Sorry, I'm also late. After Chu Qingyan muttered this, she fell into the endless darkness. Qingyan. Xiao watched the person in front of him close her eyes, and his heart was in a mess. Don't worry, he should have used too much sleeping incense. Xiao turned to look at the person who spoke. Seeing that it was a young man, he guessed that he was one of the missing children. He nodded and was about to carry the person in his arms when the hand that had been clenched at his waist suddenly slipped down. The fingers opened slightly, revealing the bloodstains inside. Xiao immediately stopped and quickly raised her left hand. Her originally snow-white and delicate palm was covered with deep and shallow knife marks. Some of them had already stopped bleeding, but some were still bleeding. The teenager stepped forward and saw clearly. He couldn't help but take a step back. After the shock, he suddenly realized something. Looking at the dagger on Chu Qingyan's belt, he said in disbelief, I thought she didn't take much sleeping incense, so she didn't fall down. I didn't expect her to use this method to wake herself up. Xiao opened her right hand again, but what he saw was dense crescent-shaped marks. Because she used too much force, some of the skin was broken, revealing the tender red flesh inside. Some of the marks haven't had time to disappear. He looked at the bloody marks on one hand, and the crescent-shaped mark on the other hand. His heart was very distressed. The person who usually cried out for a little pain was now silently enduring this pain, until he came. The hostility in his eyes was getting faster and faster. His whole person seemed to be covered by ice and snow, exuding a dangerous and cold aura. Turin, those people are not allowed to be left behind. Ben Wang will interrogate them personally. He picked up the person in his arms. His eyes were already as cold as ice, and he ordered with a murderous tone. Turin also saw the scars on the little princess's hand. At first he was stunned, but then he immediately responded, yes. Master has always been protective. Those Taoist priests probably won't have much chance to live. Xiao Su looked at the person who had already fainted in his arms. The string that had been stretched taut could finally relax. Only he felt a little guilty. He clearly said that he would protect her safety, but he broke his promise again and again. That pair of deep eyes flashed with a faint trace of annoyance. He tightened his arms and hugged the person tightly. Fortunately, the person was still safely lying in his arms. Fortunately, when Chu Qingyan was awakened by her stomach growling, she slowly opened her eyes. In front of her was an unfamiliar bed. When she turned her head, it was an unfamiliar room. She suddenly wasn't sure. She felt like she had a long dream. In the dream, there was a child, a wooden prison, a big fire, and a big ice cube. Then when she woke up, everything had changed. Her stomach failed to live up to her expectations and growled again. How long has she been hungry since she last ate? The door was pushed open and a person walked in. Seeing that she had already opened her eyes, she immediately rushed to the head of the bed and fired a barrage of cannonballs at her. Master, it's great that you can wake up. You've already slept for a day and 2 nights. Do you feel uncomfortable now? That's right, His Highness said that once you wake up, you must immediately tell him. Master, wait a moment. This servant will report to His Highness. The barrage of cannonballs was too powerful. Chu Qingyan was hit until she was dizzy and disoriented. When she regained her senses, that girl, Xining, had already rushed out of the room. She didn't have time to say the words that she wanted to say were stuck in her throat. Xining, I'm hungry. Heavens, she wouldn't become an unprecedented example of not being burned to death by fire, but being starved to death by herself when she woke up, right? However, she didn't know if it was because they hadn't seen each other for a few days, but Xining's speed was getting better and better. In the blink of an eye, she heard the sound of footsteps coming from afar. She turned her head to look at the door and saw a dark blue figure appear, walking towards her as if he was flying. When she saw the silver mask on his face, her heart was filled with longing that she hadn't felt in a long time. How do you feel? Does your hand still hurt? Xiao Su sat down at the head of the bed, and his voice couldn't help becoming gentle. Hand. Chu Qingyan raised both her hands. When she saw them clearly, she was first stunned, and then she wanted to cry. Who was it that wrapped her hands like dumplings? Stand out. I promise I won't beat you to death. Your left hand is too heavily injured. I was afraid that your right hand would get infected, so this king wrapped it up for you. Xiao Su saw her looking at her hands and her face flashed with an inexplicable anger. He thought that she was thinking about the Taoist priest in the stone room, so he stroked her head and explained. This king has already caught those people and brought them to justice. When the time comes, they will receive the punishment they deserve. As for those children, you don't have to worry. I've already sent people to safely send them home. Chu Qingyan immediately stopped the thoughts in her heart. If it was Big Ice Cube that wrapped her hands, she promised she wouldn't beat him to death, really. But being able to bring the bad guys to justice, she was still very happy. She felt that everything she did was worth it. Xining heard her lord's casual words, and felt a chill run down her back. She had heard Sir Fire Spirit say that when Master was unconscious, Lord had said that those people would receive as many wounds as Master had on her hands. I'm always assured when you handle things, he. Chu Qingyan revealed a bright smile before revealing a sad smile. Big Ice Cube, I'm hungry. Very, very hungry. Chapter 228. When she fell into his arms, that pale and bloodless face pierced his heart fiercely. That kind of feeling only slowly disappeared when he saw her pitiful face and her bright and cunning eyes. Or a look full of vitality was more suitable for her. Okay, I've already asked someone to prepare it. Xiao Su said with a slightly doting tone. At this moment, Xining, who was moved by the warm atmosphere in front of her, realized that she had to go down and serve food for her master. She patted her head and immediately ran out. Chu Qingyan glanced at the door and sighed. Why is Xining still so noisy? Xiao Su glanced at her. This is called like master, like servant. Alright, Big Ice Cube had won completely. Seeing her fiercely staring at his hand, Xiao Su felt a little uncomfortable. His hand had never been injured before, so he was not familiar with bandaging his fingers. He also felt that it was a little ugly. Just at this moment, the person on the bed suddenly said to him in a tone that sounded like she was asking for credit. "Big Ice Cube, wasn't I very impressive this time? I dealt with dozens of people alone, saved those children from under their noses, and successfully stalled for time to wait for rescue." Her eyes fluttered as she looked forward to his praise. A sweet smile hung at the corner of her mouth. Xiao Su's disapproval of her bold actions was softened by her at this moment. "And very good. You won with fewer people. This battle was beautifully fought." Xiao Su had never been good at praising his subordinates, but when he saw her expectant eyes, he blurted out these words. In fact, even he was surprised, but in the end, it turned into a slight ripple at the corner of his mouth. She was not his subordinate, so she could be an exception. "Of course. I was quick-witted in an emergency. You don't know how tight the time was. It was only an hour. If it was any later, by the time you arrived, our souls would have already returned to the underworld. But fortunately, the things we brought with us happened to come in handy." Chu Qingyan raised her tail. After being reborn, she was very happy. However, when she saw the mockery in the big ice cube's eyes, she immediately retracted her tail. In fact, during the interrogation, he could already imagine how dangerous the situation was at that time. And the little fellow had used her own strength to save him and others. It had to be said that the little fellow had grown up and had the ability to protect herself. But praising her was just praising her. She had to learn a lesson. You shouldn't have taken the risk alone and put yourself in danger. If this king was a step slower, you would have already been buried in the sea of flames. His tone was stern, as if he was a senior lecturing a junior. Chu Qingyan lowered her head. "But I couldn't find you at that time, and the iron door was about to close. The situation didn't allow me to think so much. Moreover, those Taoist priests are so aggressive that I'm afraid of any mishap." "Afraid of a little mistake? Aren't you afraid that the fire will really burn everyone?" Xiao Su disagreed. "Isn't it a strategy in the art of war to make a risky move and survive in the face of death?" She weakly refuted. Actually, when she thought about it, she had to admit that she had taken too much of a risk. "If you didn't succeed in one move, you would have thrown yourself in?" Xiao Su asked back. Although she had done very well this time, and perhaps no one under his command had reacted as quickly as her, coming up with plans one after the other. If there was a single mistake, the consequences would be unthinkable. In order to prevent her from taking risks next time, he decided to nip this bud in the bud. "Don't I still have you? I know you will arrive in time," she vowed. Her trust in him moved his heart a little. She did not hold back and trusted him with her back, believing that he would find her in the end. Xiao Su's fingers curled up slightly, and an inexplicable light flashed through his eyes. "If this king thought you were taken out of the palace and did not search the back mountain, then what would you do?" This was not to scare her, but rather anything was possible. But she firmly shook her head. "That won't happen." When the birthday banquet started, our people had already surrounded the Lu Palace. Even a fly couldn't escape, much less a person. Xiao Su suddenly shook his head. "You really have grasped everything very accurately." Chu Qingyan heard his tone and seemed a little angry. She knew that he was worried about her and did not want to see her force herself into a desperate situation. After all, if one walked by the shore, how could their shoes not get wet? In the end, she reached out to hug his arm and acted spoiled as she admitted her wrongs. "I know I was wrong. I won't dare next time. Don't lecture me anymore. I'm so hungry right now that I'm dizzy. How could I listen?" When that soft body came close and tightly stuck to him, with that soft voice, most of the anger in his heart disappeared. All right. Coincidentally, Xining had brought in some hot food at this time. Lord had already told her to keep the food warm in the steamer to ensure that her master could eat it when she woke up. It had to be said that Lord was becoming more and more attentive to her master. When the small table was placed on the bed and all her favorite dishes were placed on it, she completely forgot about her injury. She raised her hand to pick up the chopsticks, but it was a pity that the dumplings were wrapped so tightly that not to mention chopsticks, even holding the bowl was a problem. She was so hungry that she couldn't eat her favorite dishes. Chu Qingyan was instantly depressed. She accepted Big Ice Cube's kindness in bandaging her, but she still felt that she needed to find time to have Ethereal bandage her again. Otherwise, with 2 dumplings on her head, she wouldn't be able to do anything. Xiao saw her staring at the table full of food like a big-eyed tabby cat, so he calmly took her bowl and used a spoon to scoop a spoonful of food to her lips. Eat. Chu Qingyan wanted to cry but had no tears. She could rely on her hands to eat, but why did she become a handicapped person in the end? Also, shouldn't Big Ice Cube be very busy? Why did he have the time to chat and eat with a handicapped person like her? This wasn't right. Woo, I also want that bamboo shoot. Tofu with bean curd. Pork ribs. Xiao frowned and allowed her to order him around, but he didn't complain. Standing at the side, Xining was used to the way the two interacted. When Mistress had been injured, it had always been Lord who personally took care of Mistress, so she didn't find it strange. But when Turin knocked on the door and walked in and saw this scene, he couldn't help but want to turn and leave. This person who had turned into a considerate person to feed her wasn't his mistress. Not his mistress, not his mistress. He repeated the important and suspicious things 3 times in his mind. Turin, you've come. Chu Qingyan waved her dumpling's hand in greeting. She didn't forget to order the person in front of her. I want more meat paste. Xiao looked at the rice she had sprayed on his sleeve. He didn't speak and scooped a mouthful of meat paste for her before looking at Turin. What is it? Turin could be described as being struck by lightning at this time. A youth that young Wang Fei saved wants to see young Wang Fei. Chapter 229. Youth. Meet her? After Chu Qingyan had eaten her fill, she felt that her brain capacity was a little insufficient, so she subconsciously turned to look at Big Ice Cube. Xiao picked up a handkerchief and wiped the corner of her mouth. You saved a youth in the dungeon and forgot your own name and background. Chu Qingyan instantly remembered and said cheerfully, Big Ice Cube, it's all thanks to him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to save so many people by myself. She remembered that youth. The other children were all panicking and scared, but he was the only one who stood silently at the side with a determined gaze, which was rare for his age. Turin, let him in. Chu Qingyan didn't think much and let Turin bring him in. Big Ice Cube, I'm full. I don't want to eat anymore. Chu Qingyan turned to him and said. Xiao waved his hand and had the people clear away the small table and the leftovers. At this time, Huang Yi came in with a bowl of medicine. Lord Ethereal asked this servant to bring this over. She said it can calm the mind and calm the soul. Chu Qingyan glanced at the steaming black medicinal soup, and her entire face scrunched up like a bitter melon. She pleaded softly, Big Ice Cube, can I not drink it? Although Kongling had good intentions, she had drunk a lot of medicine in the past year. However, Xiao rejected her request with action. He stirred the soup with the spoon to disperse the heat, then scooped a spoonful into her mouth and said with an unquestionable tone, Good medicine tastes bitter. Open your mouth. All right. She could only obediently swallow it. At this time, Turin brought the youth in. Seeing the interaction between the two, Turin slightly turned his head away. That was the image of his cold and aloof master in his heart. That youth narrowed his eyes and turned to leave. Hey, where are you going? Chu Qingyan had just swallowed a mouthful of medicine when she saw that the youth was about to leave. She immediately called out. Hearing this familiar voice, the young man stopped and looked at her. He asked uncertainly, Are you Chu Yan from that night? The young woman before him had a gentle smile on her face. Her beautiful hair hung softly on her shoulders, and she was indescribably gentle. Her clear eyes flowed with hope, and her face that wasn't covered in makeup lit up, causing others to forget her beauty. Chu Qingyan saw that he was looking at her hesitantly. She lowered her head and looked at her outfit. At this time, her long hair was loose and she was wearing a long white dress. This was the pajamas she had made according to the modern style. However, she had been criticized by Big Ice Cube for being too revealing, so she had modified it. There was nothing wrong with it. But then she slapped her forehead and immediately explained with a smile. That's right, I'm Chu Yan. Chu Yan in men's clothes, and Chu Qingyan in women's clothes. Perhaps it was because her smile was too bright, Xiao couldn't help but ladle another mouthful of soup for her. When he saw her frown again, he was satisfied and picked up a plum and put it into her mouth. So she was a woman. That night, when she was in men's clothes, she was handsome and smart. Now that she was in women's clothes, she was more delicate than a flower. The youth didn't know why, but he was a little annoyed and regretful. However, he was also a little persistent. Chu Qingyan was instantly attracted by his conflicted expression. What? Is there a problem? It's convenient for me to wear men's clothes outside. Oh right. Why are you looking for me? Is there something that's making things difficult for you? Hearing this, the youth regained his train of thought. The words that he had already prepared were all messed up when he saw her. In the end, he gritted his teeth and knelt down. I would like to ask young Master Chu, no Miss Chu, to take me in. Chu Qingyan was shocked by his sudden kneeling. She turned to look at the person beside her, but the big ice cube looked at her with a, "It's your problem. Settle it yourself" look. She puffed up her cheeks, wondering what the big ice cube was sulking about. Then she turned to look at the person on the ground. Are you looking for me because you can't find your home and can't remember who you are? Chu Qingyan thought that this was the only possibility, so she said, Don't worry, I'll arrange for people to help you find your family. I'll also give you enough money to live. What do you think? The youth shook his head. I don't want to find them. Maybe I'm an orphan. His tone was sorrowful, and Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look at him. At this moment he raised his head, and a hint of hope appeared in his grape-like dark eyes. Can I ask Miss Chu to take me in? Like a lost puppy craving for warmth, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask, Why me? Because Miss Chu's words and actions that night impressed me. Maybe I'll benefit a lot if I stay by Miss Chu's side, he said word by word, as if to let her feel his sincerity. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the person beside her again. This was the first time someone wanted to follow her, and she couldn't help but feel excited. But she didn't forget her identity, and this kind of decision should be made by the big ice cube, so she used her eyes to ask for his opinion. Xiao saw the two of them talking back and forth, and there was an indescribable strangeness in his heart. Now that the youth took the initiative to ask to stay, and the little fellow was obviously moved, he felt even more uncomfortable. But when the little fellow didn't make a rash decision and turned to ask for his opinion, that uncomfortable feeling disappeared. She could feel that the big ice cube didn't seem to agree, so she immediately hugged his hand to stop him from continuing. Then she turned to the youth and said, You can leave first, I'll reply to you later. The youth looked at Xiao, who had been treating him coldly, and instantly retreated. Turin sensed that the little Wang Fei and his master had something to say. He took the people in the room and retreated, not forgetting to close the door. Ben Wang does not agree. Before she could speak, Xiao had already expressed his opinion. She was puzzled. Why? His origins are unknown, his identity is a mystery. Ben Wang will not allow you to keep this kind of person by your side. Xiao pushed aside her hand and said with a serious expression. Seeing the big ice cube push her away, Chu Qingyan was slightly anxious. Her dumpling hand couldn't grab his sleeve, so in the end, she didn't care and sat on his body, wrapping her dumpling hand around his neck. She looked like she was going to cling to him. What could he do to her? Get off. Xiao's tone was cold. No, I don't want, unless you promise me to let him stay. Chu Qingyan was going to compete with him. Nonsense. How can you be assured keeping this kind of person by your side? Xiao was a bit annoyed. I don't think he will hurt me. In the dungeon, she could feel that he didn't have a bad heart. Walking in the tunnel, there was a child whose legs had gone soft and he had carried him to the end. Also, she felt that if she let this person go, she would regret it. Chu Qingyan. Xiao inexplicably felt a wave of anger rise in his heart. If it was someone else, he would have already thrown her down, but this person, he couldn't do anything. She could clearly feel the big ice cube was angry. She raised her head and saw his brows tightly knit together. She felt a bit regretful and wanted to use her hand to smooth him down, but her dumpling hand couldn't even see her fingers. In the end, she leaned over and placed her lips between his brows. When the softness touched the iciness, the two youthful bodies trembled at the same time. Chapter 230. When she touched that icy cold skin, Chu Qingyan instantly came back to her senses, but she immediately lost her soul. How could she have eaten the big ice cube's tofu in a moment of stupor? Heavens, she ate tofu! The big ice cube's tofu! Chu Qingyan immediately looked up, not daring to even look at him. She couldn't get down from sitting in the big ice cube's embrace, so she just buried her head in his shoulder, not daring to move at all. Her warm breath blew on his skin, causing Xiao Su to stop breathing, and the young girl's fragrance lingered in his nose, unable to get rid of it. This feeling was a little strange. He reached out his hand and subconsciously wanted to pick her up and move her away from him. However, when he looked down and saw her like an ostrich, his hand that was suspended in midair finally landed on her body. However, he did not do anything else. Just now, when she bent down and touched him lightly, it was like an electric current had passed through his entire body, numbing his entire body. This was a feeling he had never felt before. He remembered that in the book of parenting, children would use body language to express their emotions to their close friends. He couldn't help but think of this, as if he had found a reason to convince himself. And this short moment of silence made him calm down a lot. After he coughed lightly, he found his voice and slowly said, "Why do you want him to stay?" Perhaps he should listen to her thoughts, and not act arbitrarily. Chu Qingyan was startled when she heard this. The big ice cube actually didn't get angry at her, nor did he throw her down. He even calmly asked for her opinion. This was too amazing. Did the sun rise from the west again? But this was a rare opportunity. From the big ice cube's meaning, it seemed like he wanted to discuss it with her. So she had to fight for herself this once. "I want to have my own strength. This is the first time someone wants to follow me, so I feel a bit excited and happy," she told him honestly. Xiao Su had an answer in his heart, but he still couldn't help asking, "Isn't there still the fire spirit, Turin and the others?" "That's different." Chu Qingyan finally raised her head to look at him. Her eyes were bright and her tone was firm. "What I want is the power that truly belongs to me. Turin, Hualing, and the others were only protecting her because of the big ice cube's attitude towards them. They were just following orders and not truly obeying. They were indeed very good to her. But she knew very well how much was involved in this kindness. She had never been the best candidate in their hearts, so she wanted to have her own strength. Her wings were still very weak, so she had to cultivate her own people. Perhaps this young man was not the best candidate, but she had to have a start. Now that the first step had been taken, the second and third steps would be much smoother. She had gained a lot along the way. If she wasn't strong enough, she wouldn't be able to save herself if she encountered danger. If she wanted to be on par with the big ice cube, no, it was too early to say that she was on par with the big ice cube. If she wanted to help the big ice cube, she had to be independent. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future, but she had to prepare for a rainy day. Xiao Su immediately understood the meaning in her words. He looked at her deeply. "It's enough for me to protect you. But I also want to protect you. I don't want to live under your wings forever." She buried her head in his shoulder again, her forehead against his cheek, the cold feeling dispersing the heat on her face. Her approach caused his body to stiffen slightly, but it was not as shocking as her words. He was the most clear on his subordinates. Since she wanted to cultivate people, then he would let her do it. He wanted to give her freedom and not bind her. Perhaps it was because he was helpless when he was young, so he wasn't willing to let her follow the same path. Xiao Su looked down. Those bindings in the past already made it hard for him to breathe, so why force them on this little fellow? But at this moment, Chu Qingyan didn't know what he was thinking as her entire body was attracted by the skin on his shoulder. By the time he reacted and was about to push this daring little fellow away, the wet area suddenly hurt. Xiao Su couldn't help but lift her up. Chu Qingyan giggled as she felt that it was really fun. But the person in front of her had a gloomy face, as if he didn't find it fun at all. On the contrary, he looked as if he wanted to throw her away. She immediately kept her smile and looked at him with an apprehensive expression. Xiao Su didn't know how to treat her, and when his gaze fell, the person in front of him was looking at him innocently. Suddenly, he felt that the tingling pain on his shoulder seemed to have moved to his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. He promptly threw her onto the bed. Of course, The angle he threw her was just enough for her to land on the brocade blanket and avoid her injured hand. Then he quickly stood up and said quickly, "This person, whether you want to keep her or not, it's up to you." After saying that, he had already left the room in quick steps. There was something wrong with this little fellow today. But as to what exactly was wrong, he couldn't tell. But it was best for him to leave first. As for the person she wanted to keep, it was up to her. Anyway, under his eyes, that person wouldn't be able to play any tricks. So Xiao didn't think too much about it and left her room. Chu Qingyan was thrown onto the bed, and when she got up, he had already turned around and walked towards the door. She only had time to catch a suspicious blush on his ears. Strange, why did the big ice cube's ears turn red? And why did the way he left in a hurry give people the illusion that he was running away? Although it was strange, she couldn't help but click her tongue as she leaned against the bed wall. She thought unkindly that human skin could be like this. Perhaps only the big ice cube could have such a unique feeling. It was a refreshing fragrance that was neither grass nor flower. Pei, when did she learn how to bite people? She wasn't a demon who wanted to eat human flesh. But woo-woo. But this was also because it depended on the person. If it was someone else, she probably wouldn't even think about looking. However, she felt that the big ice cube gave her too much of a sense of security, which was why she had the guts to do so. If it was any other time, she wouldn't even dare to talk back to him. If it was when they had just met, she would probably stay far away from him. How would she dare to come over? She held her chin and thought back to just now. It was a kind of illusion that she wanted to rely on and not let go. It was as if she had a mouthful of snow in her mouth. It was icy cold and very comfortable. If there was a next time, she would secretly take a bite. What should she do? She was addicted to it after just one time. Haha, she patted her unrealistic fantasy. Wasn't the big ice cube's words just now letting her make a decision? That meant that he wouldn't care about her taking in subordinates anymore? Chu Qingyan was a little excited. But she knew what the big ice cube was worried about. This was also what she was worried about. But this was just the right time. She didn't want to let this person go. She couldn't bind her hands and feet because she was afraid. Chapter 231. When Xiao walked out of the room, he felt the tightness in his chest dissipate. He felt the bite mark on his shoulder in a daze, as if he could still feel the scorching heat. "Master, what's wrong?" Turin appeared. It was the first time he saw his master in such a daze, so he was a little surprised. Xiao realized his actions at this time. He retracted his hand and tidied up the creases on his clothes. He suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and returned to his cold appearance. "Nothing. Go and check the identity of that young man." Xiao said in a calm tone. "Master, do you really want the little princess to let him stay?" Turin's tone had a hint of disapproval. Xiao did not deny it. Turin could not say anything when he saw this. After all, he was just a subordinate. Before he left, he looked at the closed door and pursed his lips. It seemed that his master had changed a lot because of the little princess. Was this change good or bad? At this time, he did not know what to say. In front of Chu Qingyan, there was a young man standing straight. "You really want to follow me?" Chu Qingyan had already recovered from her thoughts. It was hard to imagine that at this time. She was the love-struck girl who took advantage of him. The young man nodded. "How old are you?" 11. "I'll ask you again, why me?" She stared at him, trying to find a flaw in him. "I believe in my intuition. You will make me strong and give me the ability to protect myself." The young man did not have any mood swings because of her doubts. Intuition? Wasn't this the same as a woman's sixth sense? Chu Qingyan felt that she could not get anything out of him, so she changed the topic. "I don't like to be deceived. I don't like to be betrayed. Can you do that?" Taking him in was not a matter of her alone. She had to consider Big Ice Cube and the entire Fierce Wind Mount. From the moment they met, he had displayed a mature appearance, so she had to treat him with caution. "Miss Chu, I have no past. I don't know the future. I only know the present. I will not deceive or betray you. Are you willing to take me in?" The young man knew that he had to show his sincerity. Otherwise, she would rather give him up than keep him. because he could see that she cared about the man from before. What a good no past, don't know the future, only the present. Chu Qingyan was slightly moved by his words and finally gave up the interrogation. All right, I promise you, Chu Qingyan said softly. A hint of joy flashed through the youth's eyes. He immediately bowed and said, Thank you, master. Chu Qingyan did not stop him from kneeling. Instead, she looked at him and said, Since you have acknowledged me as your master, I will tell you the truth. The young man raised his head, a trace of confusion appearing on his face. Chu Qingyan walked down from the bed and slowly walked in front of him. Her expression was solemn. My name is Chu Qingyan. I am the future wife of His Royal Highness. This is my identity. The young man's eyes were full of shock. He originally thought that this person was a trusted aide of the King of England. But after coming here, he found out that she was a girl. Then there was this news. He found it hard to believe, but he quickly restrained his emotions. Yes. He lowered his head and answered. Seeing that he calmly accepted this fact, Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. She originally wanted to say that if he changed his mind after hearing this news, she would let him go. But seeing that he did not change his mind, she did not probe further. You don't have a name. Have you thought about what you want to be called? She remembered that he said he did not have a name, and did not remember. Master, please bestow a name. The young man said sincerely. Confucius said, When a disciple enters, he is filial. When he leaves, he is cautious and trustworthy. You will be called Jin Xian. Chu Qingyan thought for a while. Her eyes lit up and she immediately said this. Jin Xian. The young man repeated these two words a few times. Then he said seriously, Thank you, master, for bestowing a name. It's good that you like it. This name has given me all the expectations I have for you. I hope that you will not fail to live up to them in the future. Chu Qingyan stopped smiling and said in a serious tone that she had never used before. Jin Xian will remember. Jin Xian kowtowed to the ground and memorized the first sentence he said after waking up. When a disciple enters, he is filial. When he leaves, he is cautious and trustworthy. Good. Go out and find Xining. Have her prepare a few sets of clothes for you. Also, tell her if you need anything. She will arrange it for you. She felt that she was a bit sleepy and had him leave. Yes. Jin Xian left and closed the door behind him. Chu Qingyan looked at his respectful appearance and gave a faint sigh in her heart. She hoped that the first time would not be a bad start. Otherwise it would affect his future. When Jin Xian walked out of the room, he saw a person waiting for him at the door. Hu Ling stood up and looked over this young man. He was young, but he was already very tall. His face was firm and his temperament was cold. His appearance could be considered not bad. Lord is looking for you. Come with me. Yes. That lord should be the person in master's room. Was he worried about him? So he waited for him to come out to stop him? He did not say anything else and immediately followed. Hu Ling looked over and secretly nodded. He brought him downstairs and stopped in front of a courtyard. Lord is there. Hu Ling pointed out the location, and then left. Jin Xian nodded and walked over without any hesitation. He bowed to the person whose back was facing him. Jin Xian greets Lord. Jin Xian? Xiao Su turned around when he heard this. His eyes fell onto the person in front of him and he softly said, Good name. Jin Xian did not know if he was praising his name or praising the person who gave it. Many thanks for Lord's praise. Do you know why this king called you here? Xiao Su's eyes did not stay on him for long as he looked at the blue sky. Jin Xian does not know. He lowered his head even more. The feeling this person gave him was different from master's gentleness. Instead, it was a kind of awe-inspiring arrogance. Xiao Su did not show any dissatisfaction when he heard this. He clasped his hands behind his back and said word by word, This king cannot find out your identity. Or rather, everything about you before you came to Pingyang City is blank. This king should not let you stay, but this is Qingyan's own decision. This king will not interfere, but, the moment these two words were said, Jin Xian felt a pressure coming from above his head. It was as if 1,000 caddy stone was pressing on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. If you do anything that goes against your name in the coming days, This king will not let you off easily. Xiao Su's tone was still flat and indifferent, but the harshness in his words made the entire courtyard a bit colder. Yes. Jean Xian bowed. Go. Xiao Su did not say anything else. Jean Xian stood up and looked at the person whose clothes were fluttering in the wind. He was cold, as if no one could get close to him. But who would have guessed that such a noble person was feeding medicine to a delicate young girl with a spoon 2 hours ago? He frowned and respectfully retreated. Chapter 232. In Pingyang City, there was no one who did not know about this. This was a huge matter. That was when His Royal Highness, Prince Ing, went on a private visit, but was caught by the manly Governor Liu and brought into his residence. His Royal Highness, Prince Ing, took this opportunity to investigate all of Governor Liu's heinous crimes in the past few years as an official: corruption, bribery, misappropriation of public funds, and killing his colleagues in order to eliminate dissidents. At the same time, the King of England's young princess Consort had risked her life to save the children that Governor Liu had stolen. She had been caught in a sea of fire. In the end, she had snatched the children from the jaws of a tiger and saved dozens of innocent lives. Because of these children's explanations, the citizens were all agitated. Governor Liu and his men had been despised, while Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan had been praised to the skies. Therefore, the actions of the King of England and his wife during this period of time had been widely spread. Chu Qingyan in particular had become famous all of a sudden. As Chu Qingyan drank the medicine, she could not help but smile and shake her head as she listened to Xining's vivid description of the rumors. Although the citizens were the easiest to fool, they were also the most honest. They would not hesitate to praise those who treated them well. However, they would abhor those who did not treat them well. However, she was still a little excited as this was the first time she had appeared in public with Big Ice Cube. However, she found it strange that the person who was feeding her medicine did not seem to care about these things. He only cared about feeding her medicine. Big Ice Cube, you don't seem to be happy at all? She asked curiously. There's nothing to be proud of for doing things for the people. His tone was light as usual. As his identity had been exposed, Xiao Su had put on his mask again. Therefore, Chu Qingyan did not see that his expression was dark, and that there was a hint of worry between his brows. Big Ice Cube is used to doing good deeds. Of course, he doesn't take it to heart. However, it's rare for me to do such a good deed. Aren't you going to reward me? She blinked her big eyes, wanting to take the opportunity to ask for something good, but all she got was a big mouthful of bitter medicine. She swallowed bitterly, then raised her hand and accused, "You can't be like this. I've put in so much effort, and you don't even give me a substantial reward. I've risked my life to save so many children in vain." After saying that, she covered her face and started crying. Fortunately, her 2 hands were big enough to cover her fake crying eyes. Xiao Su casually put down the bowl, crossed his arms, and looked at her calmly. Your crying isn't choked up enough, and your eyes aren't realistic enough. Are you still crying? He had been exposed. However, as an actress, she also had her dignity. How could she let her sing a one-man show? She removed her dumpling hand and said angrily, "This is so infuriating. It's fine if you don't give me a reward, but you're bullying me." This accusation really wronged him, but he didn't want her to continue tormenting him, so he could only compromise. "What do you want? Tell me." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. "Anything. As long as it's within my ability." He raised his eyebrows. This little girl better not think of any tricks. "Can I bite him?" Chu Qingyan said silently in her heart. Ever since that bite a few days ago, she was already addicted. Even in her dreams, she wanted to pretend to be his shoulder and bite him. However, this request obviously wouldn't work because after that bite, the Big Ice Cube had ignored her for 3 days. So she took it as a warning. Sounds so stingy. Then I'll owe you this reward first. When I think of something, I'll cash it out. She wanted an empty check first. When the time came, she could fill in whatever she wanted. This feeling was awesome. How could Xiao Su not know what she was thinking? So he let her be. The Big Ice Cube acquiesced, which meant that she had succeeded in getting the reward. Chu Qingyan was secretly delighted. Then she laid down on the bed and played with her 2 little dumpling hands. She heard from Ethereal that she could remove the gauze tomorrow. She had already had enough of the days where her hands were crippled. Wait a minute, she suddenly thought of something. Big Ice Cube. How was that Luing judged? Why are you so free? Don't you need to deal with it? Xiao Su lightly said. It has already been handed over to the local officials for trial. The witnesses and evidence are all there. As long as we go through the process, the other crimes that have not been dug up will be handled by specialized people. There is no need for this king to worry. Chu Qingyan nodded. Actually, the Big Ice Cube had done enough. As long as he dug out this malignant tumor, his task would be completed. The rest would be left to the officials. The Big Ice Cube was very powerful because he had done something that most people in the imperial court did not dare to do, which was to fight against the stubborn powers. Big Ice Cube, you are the hero in my heart. Chu Qingyan gave him a bright smile. He did not know why the little fellow suddenly said this, but he had to admit that the haze in his heart was cleared up because of this sentence. Perhaps it was hard to judge whether this journey was worth it or not, but with this little fellow's words, it was enough. We will continue our journey tomorrow. He looked at the clear sky outside the window. The white clouds floated lightly, but his heart was slightly heavy. Good, a new journey is about to begin. Chu Qingyan cheered and called for Xining to pack their luggage. Jean Xian, who had changed into a clean set of clothes, was standing outside the door. He was also called in by her to say a few words. The worries in his heart were disturbed by her antics, and he did not have the mood to worry. Xiao Su sighed faintly. Perhaps this little fellow was sent by the heavens to make him happy. After Chu Qingyan and the others' horse carriage left Pingyang City, in the gloomy prison, a man in black avoided layers of guards and walked to the front of a cell where important criminals were locked up. Sir. The man in black called out softly. The person lying in the dark corner moved because of this call. When he saw the person standing outside the cell, he immediately got up and walked quickly towards him. You are here, quickly bring me out. Luing said urgently. Sir, I'm afraid this won't do. His Majesty already knows about what happened in Pingyang City, and your crime has already been drafted into a memorial by the King of England and placed on His Majesty's table. His Majesty is furious and said that he wants to investigate this matter thoroughly. The imperial envoy from the capital has already come down to supervise. This time, the Lu family has suffered a huge setback. The man in black explained the situation to him. Luing took a few steps back, his eyes full of panic. Even the Marquis can't cover it up? The Marquis said that His Royal Highness was too decisive in this matter, and it was equivalent to exposing the crime to the world. He is powerless to reverse the situation. Moreover, in order to preserve what was left of the Lu family's foundation, they could only bear the pain of losing a large part of their power. This time, after being stabbed by the King of England, it was really a huge blow to their vitality. Then what did the Marquis say to you? Luing knew that he had been abandoned by the Lu family, but he was indignant. The Marquis said that you can state any request you have. The man in black said, kill the King of England. Kill him by any means necessary and avenge my family. Lu Ying's eyes were filled with hatred. Thanks to the King of England, his future was ruined. Even if he had to die, he would drag him down with him. All right, I will pass on this matter to the Marquis. Chapter 233. After leaving Pingyang City, the group headed north. Because they had stayed in Pingyang City for quite some time, it was already early winter when they continued their journey. The weather was getting colder. Chu Qingyan was wearing a white fox fur collar, a neat fur robe, and a short jacket. Her skin was fair, her lips were red, and her teeth were white. From afar, she looked like the golden child of Guanyin Bodhisattva. At this moment, she was explaining things to Jean Xian. The one who smiles when he sees people is called Hualing. He is a smiling tiger and is quite friendly. You can ask him if you have any questions. Smile, smile, smiling tiger? Hualing, who was listening attentively, pointed at himself in shock at Lord. Do you see that? The one who is wiping the knife under the tree is called Turin. He is a debt collector and always has a straight face. Don't provoke him. Turin's hand slipped and almost cut his own hand. Debt collector? This was quite appropriate. Hualing thought that his smiling tiger was quite nice. He should be satisfied. He heard that the other side was still talking. The one who is fiddling with the wooden saw is called Mu Ling. He is clever and has a good personality. You can ask him to make any weapon you need. Mu Ling, who had been listening attentively, heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was not described too badly. And the one in white who is identifying the herbs is called Ethereal. Don't be fooled by his fairy-like appearance. He is actually black-hearted. His heart is as black as the decoction. He never adds sugar to the decoction. Ethereal's mouth twitched. Black-hearted? It seemed that he was the one who was described the worst out of everyone. Thus Xiao Su, who was sipping tea on the chair, received the aggrieved looks from his subordinates. Hualing, Master, the princess consort is bullying us. Turin. The princess consort said that I am a debt collector. Mu Ling, I seem to be all right. Ethereal. Master, am I black-hearted? Xiao Su's hand that was holding the cup trembled. In the end, he lowered his head and drank it. It was not good for him to interfere in this matter. As soon as he saw his master's aloof manner, he thought, Hualing, I knew master would protect the little princess. Turin, same here. With spirit, no problem. Kongling, how am I black-hearted? Just because he didn't add sugar to the medicine? What the hell? Everyone turned to look at Ethereal, who was already on the verge of a mental breakdown. So, no poison could compare to the little princess's evaluation. Little princess consorts means were indeed brilliant. At this time, Chu Qingyan didn't know that her and Jean Xian's whispers were clearly heard. Only Jean Xian could feel the gnashing of teeth gazes coming from all directions. He couldn't help but rub his arms. It seemed that Master had angered everyone. But why did Master look as if he didn't feel anything? That was because his master was already immune to it. That night, when they were resting in the forest, Chu Qingyan prepared to sleep in Big Ice Cube's tent as usual. She felt that something was wrong, so she asked Xining, where did Jean Xian go? This servant also doesn't know. It seems that Lord Hualing took him away just now and said that he wanted to teach him martial arts. Xining recalled Lord Hualing's expression at that time. It looked like he wanted to eat someone. Chu Qingyan thought that this was quite good. Hualing and the others were skilled in martial arts. Jean Xian could also learn from them, so she entered the tent without worry. Not long after, Big Ice Cube also entered the tent. Chu Qingyan grabbed the blanket with a gloomy expression. Big Ice Cube, Hualing and the others looked at me strangely today. I don't think I provoked them. Xiao Su lightly coughed. Don't think so much. Hurry up and sleep. Oh. In the darkness, another probing question sounded. Big Ice Cube, can I sleep in your embrace? It was getting colder and colder, and she had a cold physique. Not long after she laid down, she felt a chill spread from her feet to her entire body. In the darkness, a pair of large hands reached out and grabbed her slender waist. With a gentle pull, she was already lying in his embrace. Although Big Ice Cube was normally cold, his body was very warm. Chu Qingyan gave a sigh and buried her head in his chest in satisfaction. Sleep. Xiao Su thought of the children he rescued from the stone room. When they saw their parents, they cried and hugged them. Therefore, when he saw the little fellow so clingy, he subconsciously thought that she was a child who had left her parents and needed someone to rely on. He would have LVE prepare a few hand warmers for her tomorrow. It was getting colder and colder, so they couldn't keep going like this. The person in his embrace had already fallen asleep. Although she did not say anything about the bumpy journey, it was indeed very tiring. Xiao Su rubbed her head and also closed his eyes. The night was silent. The fire was burning with a poochie sound. Everything had fallen into a deep sleep. But at this time, a low roar came from a tent. Chu Qingyan. Suddenly the birds in the mountains flew away and the people disappeared. Hualing and the others all opened their eyes and lazily went back to sleep. Their unscrupulous master didn't help them get justice, so now they were in trouble. It was rare to see these subordinates feel sympathy for their master's misfortune, but there was also schadenfreude. The next day, Chu Qingyan got up. Big Ice Cube had already disappeared from her side. When she came out of the tent, she saw Jin Xian limping in front of her. Jin Xian, what's wrong? Chu Qingyan was shocked. It was too dark last night, and I accidentally fell. Jin Xian gave a soft cough and turned his head, not daring to look into her eyes. Chu Qingyan looked at him suspiciously. Then, she looked at the fire spirit and the rest who were leisurely under the tree. Oh, she said meaningfully. Although they were a bit far, when Hualing and the others heard this, sound, it was very long. It made their hearts tremble. After traveling for another day, when night fell, everyone set up camp to rest. Jin Xian was also dragged by Hualing and the others to spar. Chu Qingyan did not ask anything, and went to lie down in Big Ice Cube's tent. Big Ice Cube had ignored her the entire day, so she had to break the ice later. When Xiao came in, the person beside him had already opened her arms and hugged him. When Xiao thought of last night, his face darkened. He picked her up with one hand and stuffed the hand warmer into her arms with the other. Be a good girl and sleep tonight. In the blink of an eye, she was separated by Big Ice Cube, and there was an extra hand warmer in her arms. Chu Qingyan looked at the person lying down and muttered, "Didn't I accidentally bite you when I fell asleep last night? You're so stingy." How could these words escape Xiao's ears? His face turned even darker. Although they were separated by clothes, she had bitten the same place twice and she dared to say it was an accident. However, Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin at this time as she pondered. Could it be that what she thought about during the day, she dreamed about it at night? Her obsession was too strong, so she bit Big Ice Cube's shoulder when she was half asleep. Chu Qingyan revealed an embarrassed smile and immediately tried to coax him, but it was a pity that the other side did not move at all. In the end, she could only give up. It seemed like Big Ice Cube was truly angered to death by her. Forget it, she would coax him tomorrow. After a while, Chu Qingyan called out in a daze, "Cold." Xiao, who had his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked at the hand warmer that she kicked to the ground. He sighed softly and pulled her into his embrace with his long arms. The next day, when she woke up, Big Ice Cube was already gone. Chu Qingyan stood up, and was not surprised to see Jin Xian with a tired face and an even worse limp. But what she was surprised to see was the retired emperor with a melancholic face. Chapter 234. It was rare to see the retired emperor looking so worried. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but walk over. "Grandfather, what's the matter? Are the pastries today not to your liking?" This was the only reason she could think of. No. The retired emperor shook his head. Then what is it? Chu Qingyan was curious. The retired emperor glanced at her and shook his head gently. "Yen lass, I should go." Chu Qingyan was stunned. "Grandfather, where are you going? Aren't you going to stay with us?" "No, I want to go to other places. I won't be going with you." Although there was some reluctance in the retired emperor's words, his tone was still very firm. Chu Qingyan knew that once he made a decision, it would be hard to change it. She nodded. "Have you told His Highness?" Later, the retired emperor smiled. Then, as if he remembered something, he said to her, "Yen lass, this journey is more difficult than you imagined. If you don't want to go, just tell Su'er. He will send you home." Chu Qingyan laughed out loud. "Grandfather, you're underestimating me. I'm not the kind of person who will back down in the face of difficulties." That's good, that's good. I'll go and have a chat with Su'er." The retired emperor turned and walked towards the person standing under the tree. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head and looked at the retired emperor's back. She felt that it was a little strange. This didn't seem like the retired emperor's character. However, he had been the emperor for decades in the past. There was bound to be a side of him that she didn't understand. With her small brain, she couldn't figure it out, so she gave up. Xiao, who sensed someone behind him, turned around. When he saw that it was the retired emperor, his expression didn't change much, as if he had already expected it. "Imperial grandfather, are you leaving?" he asked. The retired emperor didn't deny it. "Su'er, I'm not leaving so soon. It's just that the things that happened in Pingyang City can't make me feel at ease. That was the crime committed by the Lu family. It has nothing to do with you." Xiao Su frowned slightly and tried to persuade him. The retired emperor shook his head and chuckled. Actually, in the end, it's because I've indulged the Lu family too much. If I hadn't given them so much convenience, how could they have become the malignant tumor of Sichuan? Rome wasn't built in a day. Then where does Imperial Grandfather plan to go after leaving this place? Xiao Su asked. Go to Zhongnan Temple, find an old friend, recite scriptures for Sichuan, and wash away the sins of so many years. The retired emperor laughed. His laughter was more of seeing through life and death, open-minded and cheerful. Xiao Su could sense that his imperial grandfather had already made up his mind, so he could only express his support. When are you leaving? There's no time like the present. Let's make it today. All right, I wish Imperial Grandfather a safe journey. If there's anything you need, feel free to send a message to me. That pair of indifferent eyes couldn't hide the concern. The retired emperor was about to lift his foot, but stopped because of his words. He turned and looked at the grandson he was most satisfied with tenderly. If there's a day when you can't hold on, just let go. No one will blame you. I'll remember Imperial Grandfather's teachings. Xiao Su bowed slightly and agreed. The retired emperor moved his lips, but in the end he didn't say anything. Instead, he waved his hand at him and walked to the carriage that the guards had prepared for him. He turned his head to look at the crowd, and then got into the carriage without looking back. Smoke and dust billowed as he left. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction that the retired emperor had left, and felt a bit emotional. When they first met at the residence of the King of England, he pretended to be an old beggar, and thought of ways to make things difficult for her just to test her. Later on, she found out that it wasn't a disguise. In order to rush to her rescue, the retired emperor had suffered too much. She remembered that at the inn, the Bing Cube had told her why the retired emperor was so infatuated with the pastries she made. With just a few words, she could already feel the retired emperor's infatuation and regret towards the late Empress Dowager. Perhaps it was because of his love for the Empress Dowager that he loved the house and its crow, so he favored the Lu clan even more. Little did he know that this kind of action would bury a malignant tumor in the entire Sichuan. When Lu Ying was arrested and the Lu clan lost power, the retired emperor felt that he had let down the entire imperial family. Also, he guessed that in the following days, the Lu clan might be uprooted by the Sichuan emperor. The retired emperor didn't want to see this anymore, so he thought of leaving to go to the temple to pray for the Sichuan and spend his old age in peace. Actually, putting everything aside, the retired emperor was still a very loving elder. At least in De Bing Cube's tragic childhood, he played the role of a loving elder. At least, he was more amiable and respectful than the Sichuan emperor later on. Chu Qingyan looked at the lonely figure under the tree with his back to her, and couldn't help but walk over. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Xiao Su didn't turn around but spoke very slowly. When I was born, the first person to hold me, other than the nanny who delivered me, was Imperial Grandfather. Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks and listened intently. The second was Imperial Mother. At that time, Imperial Father was busy and didn't have time to take care of me. When I was 1 month old, it was Imperial Grandfather who gave me this name. He hoped that I could be a scheming and broad-minded person. His tone was light, as if he was telling someone else's story. At noon in early winter, the wind wasn't that cold. On the contrary, it had the warmth of the sun. It was just that when the wind blew on Chu Qingyan's cheeks, she felt a piercing coldness. This coldness seemed to have spread to her chest. What happened after that? Chu Qingyan asked. She was stunned when she opened her mouth. She never thought that her voice could be so hoarse one day. She sighed softly. What should she do? She hadn't listened to him, but her heart was already aching. Xiao Su didn't seem to feel the strangeness in her voice and continued to speak. I don't remember what happened after that, but the only thing I remember is that there were several times when my fever didn't subside. It was Imperial Grandfather who rushed over from other places to stay by my side, until my fever subsided. Imperial Grandfather treats you so well. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. That's right, Imperial Grandfather treats me so well. Xiao Su gave a low laugh, but anyone could hear the faint disappointment in his voice. It's a pity that I uprooted the Lu family that he wholeheartedly protected. Chu Qingyan did not think that he was blaming himself, so she immediately went forward. She walked in front of him and wanted to hug him to give him strength, but in the end, she hesitated and only grabbed his sleeve. She looked up and said in an unwavering voice, "Big Ice Block, you're wrong. I think Imperial Grandfather did not have the heart to do it, and you helped him solve the problem that made him hesitate. You did not do anything wrong. The one that's wrong is the human heart. Greed can't stop a snake from trying to swallow an elephant. The Lu family only has themselves to blame." Xiao Su's body slightly trembled. He looked down at the person in front of him, looking into her determined eyes. Suddenly, his lips curled slightly. "This king has found that you seem to have improved quite a bit." Seeing him go from calling himself me to this king, Chu Qingyan knew that he had recovered from his self-blame. "That's right. Time is passing, the tree is growing taller, and I am also improving." Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief, and then looked up to praise herself. Xiao Su gave a low laugh. Chu Qingyan was stunned. She seemed to have heard the big ice block laugh. Before she could see clearly, she was already pulled into an embrace that was neither grass nor flower. Chapter 235. This hug caught Chu Qingyan off guard. Before she could react, her face was already pressed against the cold front of his shirt. What was wrong with the big ice cube? Chu Qingyan grabbed the corner of his shirt with both hands, but she did not dare to move. She just stayed there quietly. "Accompany me for a while," he said softly, sounding a little lonely. Chu Qingyan relaxed her stiff body and reached out to hug his waist. She could now understand why the big ice cube was so emotional. It was because he had taken all the responsibility on himself. He was blaming himself. But his duty as a prince did not allow him to be indifferent to the people who had suffered so much. This time, the Lu residence's confiscation had not only affected Pingyang City, but also the entire Sichuan's political situation. The descendants of the late Empress Dowager's maternal family, the Lu clan, had already spread to every corner of Xixian. They held military power, political power, and civil and military officials in their hands. So, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a thought flash across her mind, but it was so fast that she could not catch it. She vaguely felt that this might have something to do with the big ice cube's mining, but she could not catch it. She felt a little regretful. At this moment, the person hugging her seemed to have gradually regained his senses and let go of her. Chu Qingyan looked up blankly, only to see a palm land on her head. "You have indeed grown taller these few months. Previously, you were only at my stomach, but now you have reached my chest. It seems that I did not raise you for nothing." Sizzle. Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. It was supposed to be a warm atmosphere, but why did the big ice cube's words spoil the mood? This was obviously not right. Could it be that she was wrong? At this moment, Ethereal walked over. Chu Qingyan swallowed her words and retreated to his side. Ethereal glanced at the young princess consort, who was standing gracefully at the side. Without hesitation, he said to his master, "I have already found traces of junior sister. She is now in Yangxia County. She just needs to pass through the town in front to reach there." Xiao Su nodded. "How many days will it take?" "We'll be there in 2 days, Kongling replied. "Okay, let everyone pack up and set off." Xiao Su instructed. "Yes." Ethereal retreated. Is the junior sister that Ethereal mentioned a woman with superb medical skills? Chu Qingyan was a little excited. Xiao Su looked at her mildly. "You can say that." "Oh, that's great. My father's illness can be cured." Chu Qingyan circled Xiao Su thrice before hugging him tightly. Her smile was so wide that it almost reached her eyes. Seeing her so happy, Xiao Su hesitated for a moment. In the end, he did not tell her about Ethereal's previous misgivings. The two of them returned to the group of carriages. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the spot where the retired emperor's carriage was originally parked. A trace of reluctance appeared in her eyes. Although the retired emperor had a vicious mouth, was a little gluttonous, and liked to order people around, he was still a very cute old man. After spending some time together, she was still reluctant to part with him. At this moment, Xining walked up hesitantly. After much consideration, She decided to tell her master the news. Master, the retired emperor went to reserve the carriages before he left. Reserve the carriages? There were pastries, dry rations, and all kinds of fruits and vegetables that she had meticulously prepared. Hearing Xining's words, Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad premonition. And then, the retired emperor emptied the reserve carriages. Xining spoke quickly and finished in one go. Then, as expected, her master in front of her was stupefied as if she had been struck by lightning. Not a single bit left? Her voice was already drifting. Not a single bit left. Xining was also somewhat resentful of the retired emperor. How could he be so ruthless? Then Chu Qingyan gnashed her teeth and said, "That gluttonous, lazy, and deceiving demon." She had painstakingly made so many delicious foods with Huang Yi just so that they could have a better time on the road. How could she have known that the retired emperor would not leave a single bit for her? This was too much. The next time she saw him, she would definitely not be soft-hearted and make pastries for him. At this moment, the retired emperor, who was already driving the carriage and happily eating pastries and drinking good tea, suddenly sneezed. He immediately became alert. Who was speaking ill of him behind his back? The heartbroken Chu Qingyan got on the carriage and plunged her head into Xiao Su's arms. She felt that her heart was deeply hurt. After learning about the entanglement between the little fellow and the retired emperor, Xiao Su did not know whether to laugh or cry. With the clatter of horse hooves, the group continued on their journey. At this time, the sky was clear and the air was clear. The wind was gentle and the white clouds were gently moving. It was as if everything was very peaceful. However, what awaited them ahead was an unknown and irresistible ordeal. At this time, in the depths of the old forest, a dark purple figure was shuttling back and forth among the trees. His speed was fast and graceful. His appearance was stunning and his temperament was charming. If one ignored his unhappy expression, it could be said that he was devastatingly beautiful, a rare beauty. Bastard, why haven't we walked out of this forest yet? The beauty, oh no, it was Higashio Motetsu. At this time, he looked at the dense trees in front of him with a displeased expression. Since 10 days ago he had mistakenly entered this unknown forest, he had not walked out again. The subordinates following behind him wiped off their cold sweat. In fact, they could have walked out as early as 7 days ago. However, their young master was good at everything and was good at everything. His only shortcoming was that he had no sense of direction. Moreover, he did not allow others to question his ability to recognize directions. Therefore, when they pointed the way, their young master would immediately walk in the opposite direction, not acknowledging their ability to recognize directions. Therefore, they had been going around in circles in this forest for almost half a month. Young master, we can't go on like this. The animals in the forest are almost eaten up by us. We will have to starve tomorrow. A subordinate tried to play the sympathy card. Almost eaten up? Higashio Motetsu stopped running around. After seriously thinking about this problem, Higashio Motetsu finally made a decision. Set off fireworks and let people pick us up. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately cheered. It was as if their young master was finally willing to put down his noble face and choose to let people pick them up. Good, subordinate will do it right away. A cluster of fireworks flew up into the sky. After waiting for less than half an hour, more than 10 men in black quickly jumped over and knelt in front of Higashio Motetsu. Subordinate pays his respects to young master. Higashio Motetsu saw this and coughed lightly. He could not just directly ask them to bring him out. Wouldn't that expose his weakness? Although this weakness seemed to be known by many people. Has anything important happened recently? Reporting to young master, a few days ago, the palace master issued a kill order for Sichuan King of England. Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows. The Moon Palace had not issued a kill order for many years. What was the old man up to now? Where is Xiao Su and the rest now? They will arrive in Wuxia County tomorrow. Well, let's go and join in the fun. Chapter 236. After 2 days of trekking, the group finally arrived at Wuxia County. But the sun was already setting at this time. So the group found a small inn to stay in. When the carriage entered the city, Chu Qingyan felt that this place was very similar to the Wuxian town she had been to before. There were simple houses along Blue Stone Road, a small bridge over flowing water, and an arch bridge that seemed to have some history. The citizens that came and went had a satisfied smile on their faces. They weren't in a hurry as they walked, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll. In the distance, the tall mountains reached into the clouds and were surrounded by light smoke. It had just rained, so no matter how far or near, the sky was as clean as if it had been washed. Everything was so comfortable, as if they had returned to a peaceful environment. After learning that they would only stay for one night, and would leave tomorrow to find that junior sister Ethereal, Chu Qingyan suddenly had an idea. That was to go for a night trip. So after everyone finished eating dinner, Chu Qingyan suggested that they go out to play tonight. Only Lve was responsible for taking care of the rooms, Qingyi was responsible for washing and feeding the horses, and Huangyi was responsible for replenishing the food. There was no need to mention Hualing and the others. They felt that things like going shopping were not suitable for men like them. When Chu Qingyan's eyes fell onto Luo Qinghui's people, her eyes were filled with expectation. But he shook his head. He needed to draft a memorial to the capital city tonight. In the end, Chu Qingyan could only bring her trusted maidservant, Xining, and her new personal bodyguard, Jin Xian. After Xiao Su helped her fix the fox fur coat around her neck and gave a few instructions, she left alone. Everyone had their own things to do, and it was like she was just a freeloader. She felt a bit defeated. But didn't she want to be a freeloader? A cool breeze blew over, and it seemed to blow away the depression in her heart, making her feel much lighter. She didn't care. Since she was already out, she might as well play. After walking for a while, Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that Jin Xian's footsteps were much lighter than before. She knew that this was the result of Hualing and the others training him. However, she didn't know that Hualing and the others were actually training Jin Xian with the idea of taking revenge. After all, if it wasn't for Jin Xian's appearance, the ones protecting her would still be Hualing and the others. Just that, as the proud fierce cavalry, they would never admit that they were jealous of a weak young man of unknown origins. Not long after they left the inn, Chu Qingyan felt that this county town gave her the same feeling as Wu Town, especially when all the lanterns were hung up. The dim yellow light reflected on the crystal-clear river, sparkling and dazzling. This was the real night. Xie Ning and Jin Xian walked behind their master, who seemed to have escaped from the birdcage. They were almost unable to catch up with her pace. In the alleyway, a lamp was slowly burning. A beautiful and graceful figure slowly walked out from the darkness towards the alleyway. She was leisurely strolling, not being disturbed by the bustling scene. As she walked closer, the light slowly illuminated her figure. She was wearing a simple green cloth skirt with a black belt around her slender waist. She was wearing a plain cotton jacket. She had a white and straight neck and delicate chin. Looking up, she had rose-colored lips and a straight nose. Looking up, she had a pair of clear autumn eyes. 3,000 strands of hair hung on both sides of her head, braided into a whip. At the end, there were 2 pink seashells tied together. As the wind blew, it made a crisp sound that was a bit playful. On her forehead, there was a rose-colored teardrop-shaped gem with a silver chain hidden in her black hair. Her entire person was standing under the light of the fire. She was exceptionally beautiful and beautiful like a hibiscus. Her expression was a bit casual, just like her current mood, absent-minded. So when Chu Qingyan turned around to urge the 2 people behind her, one was careless and the other was not paying attention. The 2 of them bumped into each other. Chu Qingyan was small in stature, and her physique was not big. She was almost sent flying. Fortunately, that person reacted quickly and grabbed her shoulder, preventing her from having intimate contact with the ground. After Chu Qingyan stood firm, she looked at the person in front of her, and her eyes were suddenly filled with amazement. Her face was like the full moon. Her lips were like red lotuses, her eyes were like autumn water, and her eyebrows were like distant mountains. This woman was really born with good looks. I say, little sister, why aren't you staying at home in the middle of the night? Why are you strolling around? Be careful not to be abducted by bad people. Although it is said that no one picks up lost things here, It's hard to say that there aren't any lecherous people. Before he could regain his senses from this beauty, a scolding came crashing down on him. Chu Qingyan pointed behind her in a daze. I didn't come out alone. I brought a servant with me. Also, how did you know that I'm a woman? She was obviously wearing men's clothing, okay? Could it be that this big sister had discerning eyes? The beautiful woman looked at the young man and young woman behind her, and held her forehead. Your family's adults are really at ease with the three of you going out. Forget it, seeing that you're not stupid, this big sister will not care about you. After saying that, she remembered her second question. The beautiful woman pointed behind her. This big sister is a doctor. When I touched your pulse, of course I can tell your gender. Alright, this big sister still has things to do. You can stroll around by yourself. After saying that, the beautiful woman passed by her. At this time, Chu Qingyan discovered that she was carrying a bamboo basket on her back. There seemed to be some medicinal herbs in it. And just now she had indeed grabbed her wrist. Perhaps it was at that time that she felt her pulse. However, as Chu Qingyan looked at the back view of the man who was dressed in plain clothes but had an extraordinary figure, she clicked her tongue. Could it be that although Wuxia County looked gentle and beautiful, the people it raised were also straightforward and straightforward? However, this big sister was graceful and did not feel the slightest bit arrogant. The way she spoke was also pleasing to the eye. Chu Qingyan could not help but want to follow her. Since they were fated to meet, why not make friends? It would not be a waste of this chance encounter in the hazy night. Xining and Jin Xian looked at each other. Did they feel that their master was like a playboy who wanted to hit on a good woman? The two of them nodded heavily. However, Chu Qingyan had only taken a few steps when two people came running from behind her. They went past her and ran towards the beautiful woman. Senior sister, the patient's condition in the East City has worsened. We are all helpless. You should go and take a look. Only to hear a man anxiously say, Don't dawdle. Quickly take me there. The beautiful woman's face was serious as she hurriedly left with the two people. Chu Qingyan was left alone. Just as she reached out her hand, she watched as the other person's clothes brushed past her fingers and left. Master, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Why do you only love one flower? Let's go back. It's getting late. Otherwise, the eldest young master will send someone to find us. Xining looked at her somewhat distracted master, and could not help but advise. Jin Xian looked around. He could feel that Xiao Su's hidden guards had already arrived. Chu Qingyan withdrew her hand. Her face was filled with black lines. The feeling of being misunderstood as a love-struck fool was a headache. She just felt that it was rare to meet such a straightforward and unpretentious person in this different world. It would be a wonderful thing to be able to make friends with her. Unfortunately, the heavens were not on her side. She left just like that. She would leave Wuxia tomorrow. She did not know if she would have a chance to see her again. However, the words woman, bamboo basket, medicinal herbs and doctor. These words made her mind flash. She looked in the direction the woman disappeared. Did she miss something? Chapter 237. Mistress, he's already gone far away. You won't be able to see him no matter how hard you look. Xining waved her hand in front of her face. Chu Qingyan finally regained her senses. That beautiful figure had already disappeared from that alley. Her heart felt strange. Forget it, let's not bother about it. Let's go back. Chu Qingyan had just opened her mouth when she saw something flash in the corner of her eye. When she opened her eyes wide to take a closer look, she was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. Why was he here? Mistress, what did you just say? Xining didn't understand why her mistress looked as if she had seen a ghost halfway through her sentence. Chu Qingyan glanced at the flickering corner and suddenly said, Jin Xian, take Xining to the tea house in front and wait for me. Jin Xian looked up at her with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Cover me, Chu Qingyan whispered as she passed by him. Although he didn't understand why his mistress would suddenly make such a decision, Jin Xian still complied. With that, Chu Qingyan flew away. Xining was shocked. Where is mistress going? Don't ask too much. Let's go to the tea house first. Jean Xian glanced in the direction Chu Qingyan left and pulled Xining back. At this moment, Chu Qingyan had just arrived at the corner where that person had appeared. Unfortunately, that person had already taken a step ahead. She frowned and immediately followed. That person walked and stopped, strolling leisurely, as if waiting for her. But when she arrived, he quickly distanced himself from her. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. Was this person teasing her? In the end, Chu Qingyan stopped and pretended to walk back. That person saw this and laughed lowly. He landed on a big tree and turned around to wave at her. It's just a short distance and you're already impatient? Chu Qingyan gave him a sideways glance. Who teases people like you? The person in front of him was dressed in a dark purple robe. He had a devilishly handsome face and a sly smile. Who else could it be but Higashio Motetsu? Good. Come here. Are you afraid that this young master will eat you? Higashio Motetsu sat on the tree and waved at her. Chu Qingyan glared at him and leaped up the tree as well. He was obviously elegant and delicate, but he always liked to do things that did not match his elegance, such as sitting anywhere and everywhere. However, his carefree personality was really hard to dislike. Why are you here? Chu Qingyan asked. This was the first thought that popped into her mind when she saw him. If you can be here, why can't I be here? Moreover, he leaned over and said in a charming voice, being able to meet me, shouldn't you be overjoyed? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. All right, the road leads to the sky. You can go wherever you want. I don't care. Seeing that she automatically ignored his second question, Higashio Motetsu was not annoyed. He put his hands behind his head and leaned against the tree. An ambiguous smile filled his eyes. Little girl, we haven't seen each other for a few months. Did you miss this young master? Chu Qingyan yawned. If you didn't appear, I would have completely forgotten about you. Higashio Motetsu smiled. Then it looks like this young master will have to appear in front of you more often in the future. Chu Qingyan suddenly became vigilant. What do you mean by that? The place you are going to, coincidentally, this young master is also going there. Higashio Motetsu saw the hair all over her body standing up and felt that it was fun, so he decided to tease her. She wanted to ask more, but seeing the sly look on his face, Chu Qingyan gave up. This person was probably teasing her again. All right, as you wish. Ever since she felt that this person did not have any ill intentions towards her, Chu Qingyan let down her guard against him. In any case in this world, it was always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. He was a bit unaccustomed to the little girl not finding trouble with him. He thought for a moment and asked, You have become the King of England's Princess Consort at such a young age. How do you feel about it? Chu Qingyan turned her head and looked at him in surprise. How do you know that I am the King of England's Princess Consort? She immediately thought back to the few times she had met him in the past. She did not seem to have revealed her identity, nor did she leave any loopholes. How did this person know? Higashio Motetsu saw that the little girl had taken a step away from him because of his words. She looked at him warily and raised her eyebrows slightly, looking very elegant. Why do you look like you have seen a ghost? The King of England and his wife stirred up a storm in Pingyang City. Do you think that you can keep it under wraps? Don't you know that the entire Sichuan is singing your praises? It's hard for me not to hear about it all the way here. Chu Qingyan was still suspicious. Rumors are rumors, but how do you know that it's me? Haha. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her with a hint of contempt. Do you think that I don't have eyes? The King of England and his entourage had just left Pingyang City, and you arrived at the ocean right after. The timing is almost the same. Moreover, aren't you from the capital as well? Little girl, I'm not stupid. You don't have to think of ways to fool me. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she instantly stopped the thoughts in her mind. Anyway, if he had followed them all the way, he would have found out sooner or later. However, what she didn't understand was why he wanted to follow them. From what he said, he must have chased them all the way here from Pingyang City. Higashio Motetsu knew that the little girl was suspicious because of his words. However, he would have to appear in front of her sooner or later, and there was no reason to hide his whereabouts. That was why he appeared today when she was alone. Dongting, what's your motive? Chu Qingyan didn't smile at him. Instead, she asked him seriously. Higashio Motetsu touched his chin. Dongting? It's quite refreshing for you to call me that. I'll allow you to call me that. Chu Qingyan sighed. Don't change the topic. I'm not changing the topic. What motive could I have? Having no motive was the best motive, wasn't it? Higashio Motetsu smiled meaningfully. Chu Qingyan knew that she wouldn't get an answer even if she continued to ask, so she simply ignored him. Anyway, the fox's tail would be revealed sooner or later. She would know after some time. Forget it. Higashio Motetsu didn't expect that the little girl would give up on her interrogation so quickly. He was a little puzzled. Sometimes he felt that this little girl was mischievous, but sometimes she was terrifyingly smart. She knew that he had a problem, but she didn't insist on getting to the bottom of it. She was really an interesting girl. However, although she gave up on her interrogation, he didn't give up on his curiosity about her. Hey, you haven't answered me. What do you think about being the little princess consort? Faced with this evildoer's perseverance, Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes again. What can I think? It's just like that. Also, we're friends, but we can't pry into each other's privacy. This is called mutual respect, young Master Dongting. In the face of the little girl's righteous warning, he never took it seriously. Instead, he continued. The King of England is cruel and ruthless. He's not a good match for you. It's better for you to leave him as soon as possible. Don't say that I didn't persuade you as a friend. The palace fights are as deep as the sea. Your King of England has probably caused a lot of trouble. What did you say? Chu Qingyan's face suddenly became serious. Chapter 238. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her, feeling a little upset. Why are you so nervous? Chu Qingyan automatically ignored his words and asked anxiously. Tell me clearly, what do you mean by getting into big trouble? What big trouble? Higashio Motetsu regretted his quick mouth after being spat at by the person in front of him. Okay, I'll tell you. Move your claws away first. Higashio Motetsu pointed at her claws that were tugging at his collar. If he didn't let go, he would be strangled to death by her. Chu Qingyan let go when she heard this. Hurry up and tell me. Higashio Motetsu tidied his clothes and said slowly. Do you think that the capital doesn't know about the commotion that you've caused in Pingyang City this time? Do you think that Xiao is only targeting Lu Ying's residence? He shook his head and sneered. Xiao isn't just revamping Pingyang City this time. He's using Pingyang City as a catalyst to cut off the Lu family's roots in the Sichuan royal family. The implications are very wide. On my way here, I've already heard that the capital has arrested more than 30 important court officials because of the officials in Pingyang City. Each one implicates the other. It's like catching mice in summer. Each one is more accurate than the other. So serious? She was a little surprised. A small Pingyang City had turned into a rat's nest. When Higashio Motetsu saw her expression, he knew that she didn't know. However, as a friend, he still felt that it was necessary to tell her about the current situation. Otherwise, when she was killed in a daze, she wouldn't even know the reason. Officials cover for each other. There are many people who wear the same pants. However, when one person falls from the horse, a large group of people will be overturned. This time, Xiao is very ruthless. Isn't it normal to clean up the atmosphere and punish the corrupt officials? Hearing his tone, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little unhappy. She felt that he didn't agree with the big ice cube's approach. Higashio Motetsu didn't mind her tit-for-tat tone. He changed his posture and leaned against the tree trunk. With a lazy expression, he leisurely said, Little girl, that's because you're inexperienced. You don't know that officialdom is also a fierce battle. No one would have guessed that someone who was supposed to be heading north to mine would pass by Pingyang City. Even if he was passing by Pingyang City, how could he coincidentally appear in the Lu residence? Moreover, even if the Lu estate had mistakenly captured him, why was all the evidence placed in front of Lu Ying in one night? Why did the governor of the Two Rivers lead troops to surround the entire Lu estate that night? Chu Qingyan slowly fell silent in his rhetorical question. She knew the answer, but it wasn't the whole story. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her and said calmly, That's because Xiao Su had his eyes on Lu Ying from the start. Even if he didn't mistakenly enter the Lu estate, he would have thought of ways to make Lu Ying expose his fox tail. Therefore, the evidence of his crimes should have been collected long ago. He chose the day of Lu Ying's birthday to announce it to the public. In one night, he captured the officials and merchants who were in cahoots with Lu Ying and confirmed the evidence of his crimes. With one move, he cut off Lu Ying's escape route and also cut off the time that the Lu bloodline could be saved. Looking at the entire Sichuan, I'm afraid that only the King of England has such a ruthless method. Although he was analyzing the entire matter as a spectator, he couldn't help but admire Xiao Su's meticulous planning and swift methods. Perhaps this person could really be his opponent. Higashio Motetsu's words were basically consistent, but the only thing she didn't understand was why the big ice cube had his eyes on Lu Ying from the start. They should have gone to look for ores, but why did the big ice cube take a detour and appear in Pingyang City? It wasn't that she was against the big ice cube getting rid of evil for the people, but she felt that the big ice cube's abnormal actions made her feel uneasy, as if something was going to happen. Recently, the Sichuan emperor has been thoroughly investigating these officials. In the capital, those who have their houses confiscated, those who have their heads beheaded, the entire imperial court is in a state of panic, afraid that they will be caught in the act. And the more people that are executed, the more people that Xiao Su will offend. It was no wonder that Hualing and the others had received so many carrier pigeons along the way. There were letters that came from all over the place, and the big ice cube often stayed up all night to deal with them. It turned out that those were the evidence collected by the fierce cavalry, but she had never taken this matter to heart. And when she casually asked, the big ice cube only said that it was official business. She could only blame herself for not thinking in that direction at all. So you should have guessed it. Lu Ying's arrest has implicated the Lu family's foundation and touched the Lu family's reverse scale. This young master guesses that in the near future, this big enemy will come looking for you all. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and revealed a shocked expression. Higashio Motetsu was right. The Lu family's matter was actually a deeply rooted and stubborn power. The big ice cube had indeed offended many people because of this matter. After Higashio Motetsu finished speaking, there was no sound beside him. He couldn't help but lower his head and see that the little girl's face was a bit pale, as if she had been frightened. Higashio Motetsu immediately regretted saying all this. Originally, when he saw the little girl's lively manner that angered him with every word, he had the idea of telling her this matter. He wanted to scare her, but when he really scared her, he was a bit unwilling. All right, you don't need to worry. Since Xiao Su dares to do this, it means that he already has a countermeasure. You can be at ease and be your little princess. If you are really afraid, then follow this young master. This young master still lacks a servant girl. You are a bit dumb, but for our friendship, this young master won't abandon you. As soon as he spoke, he was met with a shadowless kick. Higashio Motetsu dodged and said hatefully, "Hey, don't be so ungrateful. This young master has good intentions. I appreciate your kindness, but I don't need to thank you." Chu Qingyan gave a cold snort, and then nimbly jumped down from the tree trunk. She raised her head and made a face at him. "Hey, you are leaving so soon. Won't you stay and talk with this young master for a while?" Higashio Motetsu felt like he had been kicked to the curb after crossing the river. "It's too late. Young master Dongting, you should wash up and go to bed." Chu Qingyan stood under the tree and looked up at him. "It is indeed late." Higashio Motetsu thought for a moment, and then took out something from his chest and threw it to her. Chu Qingyan caught it and looked at it. It was a whistle made of bamboo. "Why are you giving me this whistle? You can blow it when you miss me. Maybe this young master will appear." Higashio Motetsu held his chin and joked. Does this person think that he is the magic lamp of Allah? That he will appear as soon as he wipes the bottle? You continue to be narcissistic. This young lady won't accompany you. Chu Qingyan waved at him and left without looking back. The person under the moon looked at the direction of the girl's departure with bright eyes and sighed softly. "Xiao Su, did you really leave a way out for yourself? Why do I feel that you are always forcing yourself to a dead end? Is this young master's illusion?" Chapter 239. Chu Qingyan came to the tea house and took the two people back. On the way back, Chu Qingyan was unusually silent. Xining had a belly full of questions, but seeing her master's unusual cheerfulness, she tactfully shut her mouth. Jin Xian looked at her in confusion, but also chose not to ask. His current status was only an attendant, so he just had to do his job well. The inns in Yangsha County were actually residential houses, and the people who lived there lived in them. Because they had more people, they had contracted an entire courtyard. When Chu Qingyan walked into the courtyard, she saw the back of a person looking up at the moon. At this time, she was also hiding something in her heart and had no time to pay attention. However, this back was too familiar, and his actions surprised her. Ethereal. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and sent Xining and Jin Xian away. She walked towards him alone. At this time, Ethereal was rubbing something in his hand. When he heard footsteps, he immediately put the thing into his sleeve and turned around. When he saw the young princess consort, a trace of surprise floated onto his face, but he quickly bowed his head in greeting. Greetings to the young princess consort. Chu Qingyan waved her hand, indicating that he did not need to greet. Then she asked curiously, "What are you doing here?" If she was not wrong, the usually carefree young master seemed to be a bit melancholic. This was the first time she had sensed such an emotion from this carefree and unrestrained person. There must be something strange about this unusual situation, so she had walked over in surprise, admiring the moon. At this time, Ethereal had returned to his usual inattentive self. The melancholy just now seemed to be an illusion. However, the excuse of admiring the moon was too stupid. She did not remember him being such a sentimental person. If he had said that he was meditating on the ingredients for a new prescription, she might have been fooled. Is that so? Are you sure it's admiring the moon and not something bothering you? She had a feeling that something was wrong with Ethereal ever since she came to the ocean. Ethereal did not expect the little consort to be so astute. He paused for a moment before replying. Let's admire the moon and relax. I've been a little tired from studying herbs recently. Chu Qingyan nodded. All right, but the wind is cold and the dew is heavy. It's better to finish your daydreaming and rest early. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she turned around to leave. Suddenly, the person behind her spoke up to stop her. Is there anything else? Chu Qingyan turned to look at him. A look of struggle appeared on Ethereal's face, as if it was hesitating whether it should speak. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan did not urge him. Ethereal knew that the young Wang Fei might not be able to give him an answer due to her young age, but in this group of womenfolk, he was most familiar with the young Wang Fei. So in the end, Ethereal made a decision and looked directly at the person who was waiting for him to speak. Young Wang Fei, if someone made a promise to you but left in the end, what would you think of that person? Chu Qingyan blinked. It seemed to be an emotional issue. She did not expect this Ethereal to be so deeply buried. But if she rashly asked at this time, it was likely that Ethereal would never discuss this matter with her again. Therefore she thought about it seriously and said, it depends on what kind of promise it is. But since it can be called a promise, it must be very important. If it's between a man and a woman, for a woman to break a promise, it's hard to forgive. Ethereal's pupils contracted, and he took 2 steps back. When he saw the person in front of him looking at him in surprise, he forced himself to calm down and then asked with difficulty, really? Chu Qingyan saw his emotions fluctuate so much and hesitated. But she did not want to brush him off. Breaking a promise once, not believing it again. This is my personal opinion. I don't know about other people. Chu Qingyan was slightly apologetic. This was the truth. This one understands. Ethereal frowned. Then he said, Young Wang Fei, go rest early. You still have to go out tomorrow. With that, he turned and was about to leave. Chu Qingyan could feel that his footsteps were a little heavy. She reflected on her words and wondered if she had been too harsh. Biting her lips, she finally looked at the lonely figure and said, maybe if that person cares enough, he will not be calculative. Won't make a fuss? That person was very generous to others, but to him, he would always haggle over the smallest details. Ethereal smiled bitterly. He could only swallow the sins he had brought upon himself. Chu Qingyan looked at Ethereal's receding figure and sighed softly. Then she turned and saw a slender figure standing in the corridor. She rubbed her eyes. After making sure that she was not seeing things, she immediately ran over. Big Ice Cube, were you waiting for me? Chu Qingyan ran up to him and asked with narrowed eyes. A person who was born noble could not hide his brilliance, even if he was standing in a cold and dark place. Xiao Su lowered his eyebrows. Did you meet anything interesting when you went out? Big Ice Cube's words brought up the interesting things that she had seen tonight. Chu Qingyan was like pouring beans as she rattled on. The tofu pudding at East Street is very delicious. The boss is like a tofu beauty. She is so beautiful, but she is already taken. Under the willow tree, there is an old grandpa who made clay figurines that are more lifelike than the ones in the capital. Also, I bumped into a very beautiful and domineering older sister at the entrance of an alley. She even said that she was a doctor, but she told me not to wander around at night. Xiao Su listened to her long-winded words. If it had been in the past, he would have turned and left. Now, he did not know why, but he felt very comfortable listening to her. After Chu Qingyan finished her recollection, she suddenly remembered what Higashio Motetsu said to her on the tree. The smile on her face suddenly disappeared. The joy in her heart seemed to have disappeared in an instant. All that was left was the worry and uneasiness of the person in front of her. Xiao Su was originally listening to what she had seen and heard on the road. He found it strange that she suddenly fell silent, but he did not expect that she would pounce on him like a tiger and protect herself. He reached out to support her and was a little surprised. Were you bullied on the road? His tone suddenly became cold. Chu Qingyan heard him and shook her head. It's nothing. I just wanted to hug you. Hearing this, Xiao Su relaxed his brows and reached out to pat her on the shoulder. She was so happy just a moment ago, but now her face was filled with worry. Xiao Su was suddenly a little confused. Why was this child's mood like the weather in June, changing so quickly? He recalled that the parenting books once said that when children reached a certain age, they would become sentimental. Parents did not need to worry too much, and only needed to guide them. It's fine. Ben Wang is here. You don't need to worry. Go back and wash up early. You should be tired after playing for a day. Chu Qingyan reluctantly left the warm embrace. The worry on her face had already disappeared. Her eyes were bright as she softly asked, Big Ice Block, will we reach Fuli Mountain Range safely? The eyes in front of him were as bright as a mirror, making him a little stunned. Chapter 240. Big Ice Block, you'll arrive safely, right? Without waiting for a reply, she couldn't help asking again. Xiao Su reached out to cover her head. His wide sleeves covered her eyes, so she couldn't see the expression on his face. Yes, this king will make sure you arrive safely. Chu Qingyan's smile brightened. That fellow Dong Ting really didn't lie to her. Big Ice Block had already made all the preparations, so how could he be defeated so easily? But at that time, she didn't notice that when Xiao Su said he would make sure she arrived safely, he didn't include her. Seeing the little fellow happily come in and loudly call out for Xining, Xiao Su's lips slightly curled. When she went out, he sat in the room and finished writing the memorial, so he began to miss this little fellow. It wasn't until a servant came in to report that she was back that his heart finally calmed down. But after waiting for a while and seeing that she didn't come in, he walked out to take a look, but he didn't expect to hear the conversation between her and Ethereal. Breaking a promise. Was it hard to forgive in this lifetime? Breaking a promise once, not believing every time. The little fellow's personality was quite resolute, a bit like him. However, he was afraid that many of the promises he made would be broken. At this moment, the noble and untainted person suddenly had a hint of desolation and a sense of loss. Early in the morning, Chu Qingyan had Jin Xian wake everyone up. My little ancestor, what time is it now? You're going to visit them so early, maybe they haven't even woken up yet. Hua Ling yawned with a face full of anger. Be good, put away your depression. Haven't you heard of sincerity and sincerity? We're asking them for help, so of course we have to come early. Maybe when they open the door and see us, they'll be moved and agree to treat my father. Wouldn't that be a happy ending? Chu Qingyan crossed her arms. Compared to the people in the courtyard who were suffering from severe sleep deprivation, she was smiling with a face full of energy and vigor. Turan silently clenched the hilt of his saber. He had been patrolling the entire night and hadn't had time to catch up on sleep. Wood Spirit silently hugged the half-finished product in his arms. He had been fumbling with the blueprints all night and hadn't slept yet. Ethereal stood silently at the side. Her green eyes showed that she had not slept the entire night. However, Chu Qingyan couldn't care less at this time. She had to let them eat and drink until they were full, and then they were ready to go on their way. Xiao Su, who was sitting at the side, coughed lightly as he watched the little girl busying herself. Thus, the fire spirit stopped complaining. The Turan began to eat the porridge, the wood spirit began to eat the dishes, and the ethereal was still floating in the air. Chu Qingyan felt that Big Ice Cube's cough was too intimidating. In the future, she also wanted to secretly learn from him and learn a little. Then, she would be able to intimidate these arrogant and fierce riders who didn't take her words seriously. Soon everyone went out. They heard that Ethereal's junior sister lived halfway up the mountain. They had to pass through the town and find that mountain to climb up. On the mountainside not far from Wuxia County, there was a thatched hut that occupied a large area. Although it looked very simple on the outside, and was only built with wood and straw, there was everything inside. At this time the tightly shut door opened, and a few plainly dressed youths walked out. They held many medicinal herbs in their hands, and then they spread them out on a big rock outside, preparing to dry the herbs. After a while, a woman walked out with a bamboo basket on her back, followed by two youths. The youths who were drying the herbs immediately stood up and respectfully greeted her. "Greetings, senior sister." The woman with a bright face smiled and nodded. She instructed, "These herbs are to be used to make the tranquil heart pill. You can't have the slightest bit of moisture in them. Dry them well for me." Her voice was clear and bright, and the rose-colored blood droplet on her forehead sparkled with dazzling beauty. This person was the woman Chu Qingyan bumped into last night. The person in charge of this thatched hut was Ethereal's junior sister, Cheng Yanluo, whom Chu Qingyan and the others had been searching for day and night. "Yes. We'll definitely follow senior sister's instructions," the youths replied with a grin. "What's so funny? You should do things properly." Cheng Yanluo's face stiffened, and a faint majesty appeared on her bright face. The youths immediately stopped laughing and said seriously, "We know we're wrong. We'll do our job properly." Cheng Yanluo nodded with satisfaction. "Go and do your work." "Yes." Just as she finished speaking, another man walked out of the thatched hut. He was dressed simply in a green robe. He said with some concern, "Senior sister, are you going to pick herbs again? I heard that there are ferocious beasts on Yangfeng Mountain recently. Let's change the time." Cheng Yanluo said disapprovingly, "Third junior brother, when did you become so wishy-washy? Do you think those ferocious beasts will be afraid of me or them?" The ferocious beasts would probably avoid senior sister. The poison she carried with her was enough to make those ferocious beasts suffer a lot. Besides, I have to take these two junior brothers out to gain some experience. Otherwise, they won't know how to pick herbs. Besides, the old lady in the West District is running out of medicine. Without the white ocean grass, she won't be able to control her illness. This is an important matter, so I have to go there personally. Cheng Yanluo lifted the bamboo basket on her back. With her two junior brothers at her feet, she turned to leave. "When will you be back, senior sister?" Xiaofeng couldn't help but take a step forward. 3 days at least, 5 days at most. In any case, I'll leave the affairs of the sect to you. If I find out that something went wrong when you return, I'll skin you alive. Cheng Yanluo raised her eyebrows at him, then left without looking back. Xiaofeng touched his head. Senior sister's fierceness was increasing day by day. If she continued to be so fierce, no one would want her. Cheng Yanluo brought her two junior brothers down the mountain. They didn't walk fast, but they arrived at the foot of the mountain in the blink of an eye. "Senior sister, it seems like someone is coming toward us." One of the junior brothers pointed at a group of people in the distance and said to her, "They're probably here to seek medical treatment. Don't pay attention to them." Anyway, your third senior brother is here. Let's go first and climb up Yangfeng Mountain before sunset. Cheng Yanluo didn't even look at them, and turned to another path. Okay. The group of people was none other than Chu Qingyan, and the others who were hurrying over. Young master, it should be in front. Hualing pointed at the thatched hut halfway up the mountain, and said with a smile. Chu Qingyan looked into the distance and was delighted. She had searched high and low for it, but now she found it without any effort. She finally found it. The group went up the mountain. When the thatched hut came into view, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. This place was inexplicably compatible with an ancient poem she had learned before. Building a hut in the human realm, but without the noise of carriages and horses. What can a gentleman do? His heart is far away. Plucking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely looking at the southern mountain. The mountain's aura is fine day and night, and birds fly together. There's a true meaning in it, but I've forgotten to explain it. She unconsciously read it out loud, and Xiao Su turned to look at her. If you like it, I can get someone to build you one in the future. Chu Qingyan smiled sweetly at him. Then let's stay here and admire the flowers in spring, the moon in summer, the chrysanthemums in autumn, and the snow in winter. What do you think? Mou's eyes moved. Finally, he frowned and agreed. Okay. Another betrayal was added to the list. Chapter 241. After finding the place, the group quickened their pace and walked towards the thatched hut. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised that a famous doctor would live in such a dilapidated thatched hut. It was as if a gust of wind could blow the roof off. However, she knew that many experts like to live in seclusion, so it was not surprising. At this moment, a group of disciples who were drying herbs saw them. They seemed to be used to people who came up the mountain to seek medical treatment. However, they stood up politely and asked with a smile, "Are you here to seek medical treatment?" Chu Qingyan nodded immediately. "Yes, we took the liberty to disturb you. Sorry for the trouble." "Wait a moment, I'll call our senior." A disciple immediately turned and went in. While waiting, Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Kong Ling standing in front of the straw hut in a daze. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she sighed softly. Perhaps it was because she knew that her junior sister was living in such a place, and she couldn't bear to see it. At this moment, Ethereal stared blankly at the thatched hut in front of her. Thousands of thoughts surged in her heart. However, she quickly calmed herself down because she heard footsteps. Her heart could not help but clench and her gaze shifted to the door. "Someone is coming out," Chu Qingyan said to Big Ice Cube beside her. She was a little nervous. Xiao Su patted her hand, indicating that she did not need to worry. Chu Qingyan returned a smile. Two people appeared at the door. One was the disciple just now, and the other was a 17 or 18-year-old man. He had a clear and honest appearance. Chu Qingyan immediately went up to them. "Brother, may I know if you have a female doctor with great medical skills here? We're here to look for her." At this moment, Ethereal interjected. "Her name is Cheng Yanluo. You're looking for my senior?" "Unfortunately, she went out to gather herbs this morning." Xiaofeng replied politely. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned to Ethereal who was standing in the crowd. His face was full of surprise, and his fingers trembled as he raised them. You're the eldest senior? It's me, third junior. How have you been these years?" Ethereal stepped forward. Her face was filled with unconcealable joy. But there seemed to be a touch of guilt in her joy. No. Senior said that there is no more eldest senior in the sect. If she sees you, she will throw you out. Sorry, senior. Please leave." Xiaofeng took a few steps back with a difficult expression. He waved his hand to let the others leave. "Third junior, the matter of that year." Ethereal wanted to explain, but Xiaofeng raised his hand. "Eldest senior brother, if you have anything to say, you should say it to senior sister. You owe senior sister the most these years." "Then when will she be back?" A bitter expression appeared on Ethereal's face. "At least 3 days, at most 5 days. If you want to wait, then wait." "Come." Sun was. No one knew that everything had been fine just now, But in an instant, the atmosphere had changed to them being chased away. Ethereal, did you offend that junior? Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled after the group left the mountain. Ethereal smiled bitterly. You can say that. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid this matter will be ruined because of me. Chu Qingyan shook her head. It's not your fault. If it weren't for your help, we wouldn't have been able to find a doctor who could cure my father. Ethereal smiled, but her smile was very faint. Chu Qingyan knew that she was in a bad mood, so she tactfully didn't disturb him. Walking in front of Big Ice Block, Chu Qingyan tugged at his sleeve and asked softly, Big Ice Block, what's going on between Ethereal and her junior? Xiao Su glanced at her. You should ask the both of them about this. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. She had asked the wrong person. Big Ice Block was someone who didn't care about gossip and only cared about national affairs. How would he know? But just when he thought that Big Ice Cube wouldn't speak anymore, he opened his mouth instead. 10 years ago, Kongling became Divine Dr. Luo's disciple. 6 years later, he completed his studies and returned. I've never heard Kongling mention what happened in those 6 years. But I think it's probably a romantic affair with Chengyan Luo. Chu Qingyan nodded. She guessed so too. Otherwise, Ethereal wouldn't have asked her if she had gone back on her promise. Perhaps she had promised her junior something, but didn't fulfill it. That was why she was kicked out the moment she saw her. Big Ice Block, I heard that the female doctor will only be back in a few days. Let's hurry on with our journey. Although she hadn't seen the rumored female divine doctor, she knew the importance of the matter. She didn't want to delay Big Ice Block's journey. You don't intend to treat your father's illness? Xiao Su was a little surprised. He knew that her father's illness had always been a big stone in her heart. She was so excited that she couldn't sleep. Why did she give up now? Chu Qingyan knew that he had misunderstood. She explained, we were anxious because we couldn't find him in the past. Now that we know where he is, we just need to leave our men here and wait for the female doctor to return. We can pass the medical book to her. If she's willing, she can bring father over for treatment. This way, it won't delay our matters. Xiao Su nodded. This was a good idea. Halfway up the mountain, beside the thatched hut, Sha Feng was anxious when he saw that there was no one at the foot of the mountain. The disciple who went to check on them came back. Sha Feng immediately asked, where are they? Those people have already left. They should have left Yangxia County by now. The disciple reported while panting. Sha Feng fiercely slapped the large stone beside him. This eldest senior brother, how could he just leave like that? He didn't even wait for senior sister to come back. What do we do now? They're all gone. When will the dispute between the two of them be resolved? The disciple asked in confusion. Third senior brother, weren't you the one who told them to leave? But he could have insisted on not leaving. If he persisted, he might have been able to wait for senior sister to come back. He couldn't disobey his senior sister's orders, but he still hoped that his eldest senior brother could stay. The disciple shook his head. The world of adults was really hard to understand. Forget it, he should just go dry the herbs. The carriage slowly moved forward. At this time, a clear and sad song entered the carriage. Chu Qingyan couldn't help lifting the curtain and asking, who is playing the song? Huoling replied, it's that fellow Ethereal. Ever since he came down from the mountain, he's been acting strange. Chu Qingyan heard this and looked behind the carriage. She saw a thin and handsome person sitting on the back of a horse. He was holding a bamboo leaf and gently blowing it. The song was sad, making people feel a bit sad. He's feeling sad again. If he can't bear to leave, then just stay. This kind of person really makes people unhappy. Huoling muttered. Chu Qingyan revealed a smile. It wasn't hard to hear the worry in Huoling's voice. These people, they all had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Chapter 242. Chu Qingyan fell asleep while listening to the melancholy tunes along the way. She was so excited last night that she couldn't sleep. Today, she climbed the mountain and went down the mountain. Her energy had long been exhausted. At this time, she could only curl up in the carriage and sleep soundly. At this time, Xiao Su had in his hands all the information of the dozen or so cities that they were about to reach in the past 10 years. From the officials to the people's livelihood, natural and man-made disasters, there were many major disasters that had occurred. Almost all of it was placed on the table. He had not slept for a full 6 hours for a period of time. He had been reviewing this information day and night. He circled the problematic officials and incidents and wanted to focus on them. At this time, he felt a little tired. He raised his hand and pinched the space between his eyebrows. He turned sideways and looked at the little fellow who was sleeping peacefully. The irritation in his heart was unknowingly soothed. Xiao Su curled his lips and felt a little helpless. This little fellow seemed to be able to sleep soundly no matter where she was. It was as if she was sleeping peacefully on her side when the world collapsed. What could you do to her? However, this easygoing personality was somewhat likable. And it was also during this moment that the restless little fellow had unknowingly climbed onto his lap and pillowed her head on his lap. Then, she revealed a satisfied look. Xiao Su's hand that was holding the brush stiffened slightly. He put down the brush and wanted to move the little fellow back to the couch. However, just as he stretched out his hand, this little fellow, who knew if she was really asleep or pretending to be asleep, actually went overboard. She hugged his arm and did not let go. She even rubbed her face against it. Then she hugged his arm and fell silent. This time, Xiao Su was in a dilemma. Should he push her away or not? If he pushed her away, he would definitely wake her up. If he didn't push her away, he wouldn't be able to continue dealing with this information. Big Ice Cube, sleep and rest. The unconscious muttering made Xiao Su slightly startled. During class, when he lowered his head to look, the little fellow's eyes were tightly shut and she had a satisfied look. In the end, after weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Su still couldn't bear to wake her up. He allowed her to hug his arms, use his legs as a pillow, and fall asleep. He thought back to the things that had happened in the past few days. Was there anything that had not been dealt with? The memorials that had been sent back to Jingdo contained a new round of evidence, as well as a new batch of officials that were about to be arrested. He wondered if his father was satisfied with the efficiency of his work. Are you satisfied? Xiao Su could not help but laugh at himself. Regardless of whether he was satisfied or not, it was no longer that important to him. The cool breeze, accompanied by the warmth of the sun, blew into the car and brushed past the two people cuddling together. He seemed to be a little tired and sleepy. Unknowingly, the person lying on his lap had curled up into his arms step by step. Unknowingly, the person with his head lowered was slowly drawing the person in his arms closer. The two young bodies were getting closer and closer, just like the two willow branches outside the car window that were blown by the wind. They were entangled and could not be separated. Outside the car, the carrier pigeon landed again. Hualing took the letter and wanted to immediately pass it to the person in the car, but he was stopped 3 steps away by Turin. What are you doing? Hualing was a little confused. Master hasn't had a good rest in 4 days. Do you plan on waking him up? Turin put down his hand. He did not say anything, but his gaze had already turned to the carriage. Hualing followed his gaze and saw that the curtains were raised from time to time. He could see the two figures leaning against each other. They were so harmonious, so matching. Hualing immediately put away the letter in his hand and said with a smile, "Then I'll wait until tonight to give it to Master." Turin did not reply. His gaze moved away from the car and turned to the blue sky. "Hualing, I have a feeling that a storm is coming." Hualing put away his playful expression and looked at him with a serious expression. "On this road, Master has offended too many people. I feel that Master is urgently making a plan. This is a feeling that I have never felt before after following Master for so many years," Turin said in a low voice, as if he did not want others to hear. Hualing nodded. "I also have the same feeling." Turin turned his gaze back to the two people in the car, or rather, it fell on the delicate face. "I hope that this harmony can be maintained." Hualing was silent and let out a sigh. As the most elite fierce cavalry in the Sichuan, they had a keenness that others did not have. Although their people had already evacuated from the capital, they could still faintly feel the fluctuations in people's movements and the surging waves in the dark. The two of them did not say anything else because they had always followed master's orders. Even if they were wrong, they would resolutely carry it out. The afternoon wind was not as cold as the morning wind. It carried the warmth of the sun as it fell on the two people in the car. They couldn't help but indulge in this comfortable afternoon. Who knew if this kind of snuggling would happen again in the future? Chu Qingyan, who was sleeping, did not know how hard it was to obtain this kind of peace. Capital Imperial Palace. In the imperial study, memorials were piled up on the table. It was basically a list of officials that had been gathered in the past few days regarding corruption and bribery, as well as the conflicts of interest with Madame Lu. Evidence of crimes, account books, and letters were all placed on another table. These were all sent to the capital by Xiao Su. They were all important and trivial matters. Every one of them was enough to make the officials involved speechless and directly convict them. In the past few days, everyone in the palace had been acting cautiously, for fear of provoking the person in the imperial study. When the Sichuan emperor saw the evidence, he felt as if there was a fire in his chest. He had thought that the country under his rule was not as bad as he had imagined. However, when the evidence was presented, he realized that it was worse than he had imagined. The reason for the empty state treasury had finally been found. The gold, silver, and jewelry obtained from the confiscation had filled the entire state treasury, but there was no place to put them. It was enough to show how deeply these vermin had eaten. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's not worth it if you are angry and hurt your body. Eunuch Xiao came in with a medicinal soup that could clear away heat and detoxify. Xiaoji, I'm speechless. I'm ashamed to face my ancestors. Look at how poorly I've governed this country. The West Xian emperor sighed. He still felt stifled in his chest. Eunuch Xiao hurriedly said, Your Majesty, don't say that. Look, haven't these people received the punishment they deserved? The evidence collected by His Highness King Ing was enough to convict them of their crimes. The vermin being caught is a cause for celebration for the people. Your Majesty should be happy. Yes, the King of England has really helped me a lot this time. The Sichuan emperor stroked his beard and said undeniably, The King of England is really a valuable arm of your Majesty. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have such strong courage. Eunuch Xiao praised with a smile. The Sichuan emperor's hand paused, and he seemed to smile faintly. However, this valuable arm of his had been forced to a dead end by him. Chapter 243. Ever since I ascended the throne, I've wanted to reorganize the entire Sichuan kingdom. Unfortunately, I don't have the strength. I can only let them nibble away at the foundation of the Sichuan kingdom. Sichuan emperor stroked the dragon head on the armrest with one hand, looking disappointed. When Eunuch Xiao heard this, he quickly comforted. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness is helping you collect evidence and punish those vermin. You can rest assured. Sichuan emperor paused when he heard this. He turned to look at Xiaoji, who had been with him for decades. Xiaoji, who had accompanied him since he was a child, suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, Do you also think that I'm too harsh on Sewer? Too cold-blooded? When he finished speaking, Eunuch Xiao lowered his head and said, Your Majesty, I don't know how to answer. Sichuan emperor laughed when he heard this, but he quickly restrained himself. His expression was complicated and difficult to discern. Xiaoji, you actually think so too, right? You're just afraid that I'll punish you, so you don't dare to speak the truth. Eunuch Xiao lowered his head even more and sighed softly. Your Majesty, you've already made up your mind. I can't change your decision no matter what I say. Sichuan emperor shook his head and said, You're such a cunning old man. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. Eunuch Xiao licked his lips. Sichuan emperor choked, and then snorted coldly. Xiaoji was right. Regardless of whether he felt guilty about Sewer or not, once he made up his mind, he would not allow himself to change it. Even if he regretted it and wanted to stop, it was already too late. The moment Sewer stepped out of the capital city, everything was set in stone. Your Majesty, the fourth prince requests an audience. At this moment, a young eunuch entered the palace and reported. Sichuan emperor's gloomy expression immediately turned sunny when he heard this. quickly summoned the fourth prince into the palace. After a while, Xiao Ran stepped into the imperial study. "Greetings, imperial father," Xiao Ran said with a smile as he bowed to the Sichuan emperor. "No manners." Sichuan emperor pretended to be unhappy, but the smile lines on his face betrayed his current mood. Xiao Ran chuckled. "Imperial father, do we still need to talk about rules between father and son? Wouldn't that be too sad?" "Nonsense, where did you learn these strange words?" Sichuan emperor smiled and shook his head. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the emperor was in a good mood. He did not blame Xiao Ran for his rudeness at all. When Xiao Ran heard this, he suddenly felt a little absent-minded, and a charming smile appeared in his mind. "Hey, you're still calculating this with me? Don't you know that talking about money hurts feelings? Ranner, what are you thinking about?" Sichuan emperor called out to him when he saw his son spacing out. Xiao Ran recovered from his memories and smiled. "Imperial father, I was thinking about eldest brother. It's been almost half a year since he left the capital, and I miss him very much. I wonder where he is now, and how he's doing. After all, it's not like the capital, and there are many conditions that can't keep up." Sichuan emperor lowered his head and glanced at the cases in front of him. He sighed faintly. "It's true that half a year has passed. You're a good child. You still miss your imperial brother." "Imperial father, I want to see eldest brother." Xiao Ran suddenly spoke. This was a thought that had been circling in his mind. Ever since Qingyan left, he felt that his entire life had become dull. He had never felt this way before, and he had never thought that his life would be so exciting because of someone's arrival, and so dull because of someone's departure. In reality, the person he wanted to see wasn't his eldest brother, but the young girl who had illuminated his entire summer. "Ranner, you've already grown up. Don't say such childish things again." Sichuan emperor suddenly looked at Xiao Ran with a serious expression. He wholeheartedly wanted to raise this son of his, so he shouldn't get too close to Su. Otherwise, in the future, everything would be difficult to handle. Xiao Ran pursed his lips. He didn't know why his imperial father's occasional words and actions were always against him getting close to his eldest brother, while his imperial mother explicitly forbade him from doing so. In the past, he didn't understand, but in the past half a year, he vaguely had an answer. Xiao Ran smiled brightly. "Imperial father, I was joking with you. Even if I left the city now, I wouldn't be able to catch up with eldest brother. If you really miss him, then wait until eldest brother has set up camp in the Fuli mountain range. Then I will go and visit him. At that time, I would also like to see that mountain range that is rumored to be rich in resources." Sichuan emperor nodded in relief. "Ranner, these are troubled times. You only need to study according to the courses that imperial father has taught you. In the future, when you are strong enough, it will come in handy." Chaoji stood in the hall. When he heard Sichuan emperor's words, he lowered his head even more. Anyone who understood the situation would be able to hear the hint in Sichuan emperor's words. Sooner or later, His Majesty would hand over the entire Sichuan to the fourth prince. Xiao Ran nodded solemnly. He knew that his imperial father had high hopes for him, and even his imperial mother had been urging him to study hard and practice martial arts. "Imperial father, don't worry. I will not let you down. Good boy." Sichuan emperor nodded with satisfaction, then waved to him and said, "Come here and let imperial father see how tall you are now." Xiao Ran immediately strode forward and said with a smile, "Imperial mother said that I has grown a lot taller." Sichuan emperor touched his head and nodded with relief. "Not bad, not bad. You have grown a lot taller. I estimate that by this time next year, you will be as tall as imperial father. Xiao Ran would be 13 next year. By that time, the entire Sichuan would have been reorganized, and he would be able to participate in politics." Chaoji looked at the happy father and son in front of him, as if they were no different from ordinary father and son. This was how His Majesty and the fourth prince usually got along. His Majesty did not have the airs of an emperor, and it was completely different from his usual majesty. It was enough to see how much His Majesty doted on the fourth prince. He suddenly remembered that 7 years ago, When His Royal Highness returned to the imperial study after winning a battle, His Majesty was receiving envoys from other countries. He seemed to have heard His Royal Highness talking to himself outside the hall. I wonder if Imperial Father can still deny it when he sees me? After all, I have grown so big. One was often absent and tried hard to prove himself, but never received the treatment he deserved. The other did not need to try hard to please and could easily get the Imperial Father's favor that others could not enjoy. This was the difference. Xiao remembered a concubine who had been locked in the cold palace for many years. When we care about a person, no matter how many shortcomings he or she has, we only see his or her good points. But when we don't care about a person at all, no matter how good or how hard he or she works, he or she does not exist in our eyes. This was the difference between caring and not caring. And she was the one who was not cared about. Xiao moved his eyes away and sighed softly in his heart. Every time he saw His Majesty and the fourth prince being close and warm, he could not help but think of the lonely child with hidden expectations in his eyes. Now that child might not have any expectations in his heart anymore. Chapter 244. Ranner, let me test your recent homework. The Sichuan Emperor rubbed his chin and suddenly said. Xiao Ran nodded when he heard this, looking like he was all ears. The ancients wanted to be virtuous to the world. What's next? The ancients wanted to be virtuous to the world, first govern the country. To govern the country, first unify the country. To unify 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 the country, then unify the country. To unify the country, then unify the world. Xiao Ran silently recited without hesitation. His voice was bright and clear, giving people a feeling of vitality. The Sichuan Emperor nodded in satisfaction as he listened. Finally, he said, do you understand the meaning of this sentence? I do. It means that if you want to manifest your virtue to the people, you must first govern your country. If you want to govern your country well, you must first govern your home well. If you want to govern your home well, you must first perfect yourself. If you want to perfect yourself, you must correct your mentality. When your mentality is correct, you will be able to perfect yourself. When you perfect yourself, your home will be in order. When your home is in order, your country will be stable and prosperous. When your country is stable and prosperous, the world will be at peace. Imperial Father, am I right? Xiao Ran mischievously winked at the Sichuan Emperor. The Sichuan Emperor couldn't help but reach out and pat his head. Well said, Ranner. Now, you must first learn to correct your mentality and become a wise and intelligent person in the future. Ranner understands. Xiao Ran seriously replied. Ranner, Imperial Father wants you to understand one thing, and that is that in this world, the weak are prey to the strong. Only when you have the highest authority can you do what you want to do. Xiao Ran nodded. I will remember. All right, you can leave first. Imperial Father still has to deal with state affairs. Sichuan Emperor affectionately patted his head. Xiao Ran immediately frowned when he heard this. Imperial Father, you should rest first. Otherwise, no matter how strong your body is, it won't be able to withstand such fatigue if you continue to work like this. Sichuan Emperor didn't think much of it. I'm busy with state affairs, and it's an eventful time now. If I don't deal with it in time, I'm afraid that there will be a big problem. Don't worry, I'll take a break when I have time. Yes. Knowing that it was useless for him to say anything more, Xiao Ran turned to Eunuch Xiao and said, Eunuch Xiao, take good care of my Imperial Father, and remind him to rest. If I find out that you didn't fulfill your duties, this prince definitely won't let you off easily. When Eunuch Xiao heard Xiao Ran's words, he said in fear and trepidation, this old servant will remember the fourth prince's instructions. Sichuan Emperor chuckled. All right, it's useless for you to threaten Xiao. He has been with me for so many years, and he knows my temper best. You'd better worry about your schoolwork. Xiao Ran couldn't help but sigh. With a mature look on his face, he said, Imperial Father, you're not young anymore. Why do you always make people worry about you? Sichuan Emperor choked on his words, but in the end he was amused. Good boy. After Xiao Ran left the imperial study, Sichuan Emperor still had a faint smile on his face. Qiao Ji, have you noticed that since half a year ago, Ranner's temperament seems to have become more lively? The way he speaks is also strange and likable. But I like this change very much. Qiao Ji thought about it. Half a year ago, wasn't the fourth prince the most attentive to the King of England's mansion? There seemed to be a faint rumor that the fourth prince and the little King of England's consort had a close relationship. But Qiao Ji felt that it was better not to talk about such groundless things. So he echoed, yes, this old servant thinks that the fourth prince is becoming more and more sensible. Sichuan Emperor said with some pride, Consort, you gave birth to a good son for me. Considerate, filial, motivated, and intelligent. I'm afraid that among these children, only Ranner really cares about me. Qiao Ji nodded, but another peerless person appeared in his mind. 10 years ago, His Royal Highness King Ing also fit these 4 descriptions. Unfortunately, after that fire, he became a man of few words and exiled himself. Xiao Ran went out of the imperial study. The palace made of the Moon Hall, Jade Rabbit, was already waiting at the door. When she saw him come out, she went to greet him. Your Highness, Consort Yu wants you to go to the Moon Hall. Yes. Xiao Ran followed her to the Moon Hall. Xiao Ran entered the Moon Hall. When Consort Yu saw him, she immediately ordered the palace maid to bring out the carefully brewed soup. Mother, don't make me drink this every time I comes. I'm almost tired of drinking it. Although Xiao Ran said this, he still drank the soup obediently. Consort Yu glanced at him. Now that you are growing, it's good to nourish yourself more. Xiao Ran smiled but did not say anything. Did you go to the imperial study to see your father today? A stove was lit in the hall, dispelling the cold of winter. Consort Yu lazily leaned against the back of the chair, seemingly uninterested in asking. Xiao Ran nodded, then told her about what happened in the imperial study. He only hid the fact that he was going to find his eldest brother. Consort Yu straightened her body slightly, her face full of pride. You have to study hard, don't let down your father's expectations. I know. Xiao Ran nodded. Speaking to hear, Imperial concubine Moon beckoned to him. Xiao Ran obediently walked over. Imperial concubine mother, what is it? Consort Yu looked into his eyes. Her eyes, which were usually as gentle as water, were now like a mirror, reflecting his appearance, but no emotions could be seen. Xiao Ran was a bit unnatural. Mother, is there something you want to say to I? Ranner, it's been half a year. Are you still thinking about that girl from the Chu family? Consort Yu narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. Xiao Su flatly denied. Mother, you're thinking too much. But that knowing gaze made it impossible for him to hide. Xiao Ran unnaturally lowered his head. Consort Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness, but she still had a beautiful smile on her face. No one knows a son better than a mother. You came from my stomach. How could mother not know what you're thinking? A trace of bitterness appeared on Xiao Ran's face. Mother, I really can't let go of Qingyan. After receiving confirmation, Consort Yu's expression became a bit ugly, but Xiao Su didn't notice because he had his head lowered. However, Consort Yu's mind changed. She felt that this was actually an opportunity, and a mysterious smile appeared on her face. Ranner, you've already grown up. Mother doesn't want to restrict you too much, but there is a principle that you need to understand. If you want to obtain something that doesn't belong to you, then you need to have enough ability. You need to stand higher than others and control more than others. Only by becoming a person of power that others fear, can you protect the people you want to protect. Xiao Su didn't quite understand. I need to have power and status that others can't reach. That's right. That's why you need to work hard towards that goal. Xiao Ran nodded solemnly. All right, for Qingyan, he would work hard to fight for it. As Imperial concubine Moon saw this, she revealed a triumphant smile. This son of hers was good at everything, but he didn't have the heart for power. It didn't matter. If he didn't have it, then she would be the one to instill it. She didn't believe that she wouldn't be able to change his mind over time. Her life's wish was to raise a generation's ruler. Thus, in the following days, under Consort Yu's unwitting indoctrination, Xiao slowly grew from an honest and kind youth to a person who was obsessed with power. Of course, this was a story for another time. Chapter 245. This month to Chu Qingyan could be said to have passed like a century. However, when she looked back, she felt that time had passed in a hurry. Everything she had experienced was still vivid in her mind. Their group left Yangxia County and entered Ji County. Coincidentally, they ran into the son of the Ji County magistrate who was bullying people on the street. Big Ice Cube captured him, and the group went to the county yamen for a lesson. Along the way, they flipped through Ji County's recent political achievements to look at. They found many cases where officials were heartless. That day, the Ji County magistrate was suspended from his post for investigation. They stayed in Ji County for 2 days. The Jingdo imperial envoy from Pingyang City came overnight to take over the investigation of the Ji County magistrate. After leaving Ji County, it was Jizhe County. The Jizhe County magistrate was said to be a diligent and honest official who loved the people. However, there was a notorious bully in the county. Rumor had it that this bully had people in Jingdo. Normally, he acted tyrannically. Even the Jizhe County magistrate could not do anything about him. Every time he passed it on to a higher official, it would be suppressed for various reasons. Over time, the county magistrate could only turn a blind eye to him. Once they arrived at Jizhe County, Xiao directly revealed his identity to the Jizhe County magistrate. He organized all of the cases that the bully had committed. He then wrote a letter to the Jingdo imperial envoy. In less than 2 days, the bully was arrested and brought to justice. Even the official he claimed to have people in Jingdo was traced back to the vine and found a wrongful case. Once again, it implicated 3 or 4 court officials. The group of people left Jizhe and entered Liuxiang City. It was a city rich in flowers. While they were still outside the city, they could already smell the fragrance. This place was also the main source of spices for the palace. However, Chu Qingyan found that the difference between the rich and poor in the city, which should have been rich because of the supply of spices, was very clear. Liuxiang City had a family of spices, the Lu family. They mainly provided all kinds of expensive spices to the harem. However, the source of these spices were all purchased cheaply from the surrounding farmers. Then they processed the spices and sent them into the palace. Their usual way of squeezing is to make the poor poorer and them richer. However, the supply of spices to the palace was not fixed. It needed to be selected every year. Only the person who won first place was qualified to supply the palace. After all, the people who used the spices were the most distinguished people in Sichuan, such as the empress, imperial concubines, and princesses. So every year, the palace eunuchs in charge of purchasing would come down to Liuxiang City to judge. But no matter how the competition went, the Lu family would always come out on top. Whether or not there was something fishy going on, everyone knew. However, the judges for this year's selection were not only the purchasing eunuch from the palace, but also a woman he had never seen before. That person was the wood spirit's subordinate who was most proficient in creating spices, but the purchasing eunuch claimed that she was a female official sent by the higher-ups to be in charge of purchasing. In the end, the result of the selection was that an unknown Huang family that made a living by developing spices won the competition. The Lu family refused to accept this and colluded with the purchasing eunuch to frame the Huang family. However, they were caught on the spot. At the same time, it was revealed that the Lu family and the purchasing eunuch had been in cahoots for many years, abusing their power for personal gain and other illegal activities. When they dug deeper, the results were even more shocking. As a result, a small spices selection unearthed a complete vine that was abusing their power for personal gain. Hanging on the vine were not only the spices they purchased, but also the people involved in the procurement of services and ingredients. The imperial envoy from the capital followed, organizing these matters into memorials and sending them to the capital. The Sichuan emperor was once again enraged. For a time, a great purge began in the imperial harem. It was said that the maternal families of many imperial concubines were also involved. Immediately, everyone in the palace felt insecure. The imperial envoy sent from Jingdo also complained repeatedly. Before he could finish handling one case, other cases had already come one after another. He was already in a terrible fix. It was said that his head of hair had almost been pulled out by him. On the way north, he punished corrupt officials and dug out the malignant tumors buried deep under the people's livelihood. On this road, it was not very smooth. Chu Qingyan sat in the courtyard and looked at the brightly lit room. A faint trace of worry floated onto her face. Just now, Hu Ling had brought in a new letter. She knew that in the coming city, there would be another open and covert struggle. Tonight, Big Ice Cube would be busy until late at night again. In this month, she had seen what it meant to work day and night. In order to deal with these eunuchs in one strike, Big Ice Cube had put in a lot of effort and sweat. Even she, as a bystander, couldn't help but feel tired for him. However, she could not speak out to dissuade him because Big Ice Cube was doing things for the people. These officials involved were truly too daring. They used all kinds of methods, sometimes even making one's hair stand up in anger. When the shocking truth hidden under the beautiful outer clothing was dug out, she couldn't help but be shocked. She wanted to fiercely beat these sinners and obtain justice for the people who had died unjustly and had been bullied. Big Ice Cube said that if he could be a bit faster, he could save the people from the abyss of suffering. Because he felt that he wasn't fast enough. But in the eyes of outsiders, for 2 months in a row, using thunder-like methods, iron-like blood, and unexpectedly digging out the worms hidden in the 100-year-old foundation, this was simply the largest purge of corrupt officials in the history of Sichuan. At the same time, it was the fastest and most thorough action against corruption. The officials were in a nightmare, the entire country was shocked, and the people were celebrating. But when Chu Qingyan looked at the hero that the people were praising, there was a layer of water in her eyes. Big Ice Cube, in these days he had become thinner and thinner. Those eyes that were as bright as stars were like the coldest night in winter, deep without a bottom. No one knew what he was thinking right now. Being so focused on doing things, forgetting to eat and sleep, she was worried that there would be a day when Big Ice Cube's body would collapse. She did not understand why Big Ice Cube was in such a rush. He was in such a rush to finish these things when there was clearly a lot of time. She tightly hugged her arms. She suddenly felt that the night was becoming colder and colder. She was about to turn around when she heard footsteps behind her. Looking up, she saw that it was Ethereal. Ethereal was holding a bowl of steaming medicinal soup in his hand. He walked in front of Chu Qingyan and said in a serious tone, "Little Gongzi, this is the medicine for Master's internal injuries." Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Doesn't His Highness's internal injuries no longer need to take medicine, and can be slowly recuperated? Ethereal shook his head. Originally, according to the previous medicine, Master could have recovered by this month. But because Master was so busy with state affairs and neglected to eat and sleep, his internal injuries have relapsed. In recent days, his breathing has become unstable, so this subordinate immediately went to brew the medicine. Chu Qingyan's heart clenched. Then after drinking this medicine, will His Highness recover? As long as His Highness cooperates and is not so tired, and has a reasonable rest, he will recover in half a month. Ethereal replied after careful consideration. But both of them knew that this was impossible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.